Chapter 719. Ao Siphon led the sea monkey-like evil dragon out of the gate of the house. At first glance, he saw Yazi sitting on a rock. His face slightly puffed up, but he didn't say anything. He just gazed at Yazi, who was also gazing at him with an expressionless face. They were members of the same generation in the dragon clan of the Four Seas, and they were both prodigies. If Chionyo and Yazi were placed in the current generation of the dragon clan of the Four Seas, they would be at the very top. Unfortunately, just Ao Siphon alone was enough to suffocate them, not to mention that there was another person who possessed greater talent than Ao Siphon back then. Thus, Chionyo and Yazi didn't have the qualification to control the sea area. Although they were heaven's favorites, they could only join the 9 sons of the dragon tribe to fight against the strong enemies to create peace for the dragon tribe in the Four Seas. Today, Chionyo was dead, Yazi had created a big fire, and the other one was missing. Ao Siphon was also put into the evil dragon list. It was fate that made fools of people. Who would have thought that the most prosperous generation of the dragon tribe in the Four Seas would have no one left in the dragon palace of the Four Seas? Evil dragon Ao Siphon, we are here under the order of the Dragon King of the West Sea. Kneel down to receive the order. Fu Shi's eyes sparkled. He didn't care that he was in the evil dragon's territory. He stepped forward and shouted. Anyway, Yazi and Fu Shi had created a big trouble. Even the dragon palace of the Four Seas didn't have the guts to protect them. Looking at the entire endless sea, the demonic beasts in the outer sea certainly didn't want to accept the members of the dragon tribe. Moreover, the sea monster guild wasn't weak in the outer sea. If the evil dragon tribe didn't want to accept them, they would have to die. However, Fu Shi had always been smart. Before he came, he had thought of many possibilities. Although the evil dragon tribe wasn't weak and they didn't need to fight against the mutant, they still had the power to fight against the sea monster guild. However, they couldn't take the blame for nothing. Luckily, the evil dragon tribe had many spies from the dragon palace of the Four Seas. Moreover, Ao Siphon had been deceived by the spies of the dragon palace of the Four Seas, so he had always respected the dragon palace of the Four Seas. It was one thing for them to directly state their intentions, but it was another for them to hang the banner of the dragon palaces of the Four Seas on the banner of their intentions. Even if Ao Siphon was unwilling, he would not refuse the orders of the dragon palaces of the Four Seas. This was because once he became a Sin Dragon, his descendants would also be called Sin Dragons thousands of years later. They would not be accepted by the dragon palaces of the Four Seas. However, in the eyes of other demons, they were descendants of the dragon clan. It could be said that the benefits of the dragon palaces of the Four Seas would not be shared with them, but if something happened to the dragon palaces of the Four Seas, all the Sin Dragons would be affected. Therefore, the Sin Dragons would think of ways to earn merits to show that they had realized their mistakes and were willing to repent. Only those with enough merits would be removed from the register of evil dragons and become a member of the dragon palace of the Four Seas again. Hua, Ao Siphon chuckled and said with a face full of disdain, then, what about the Dragon King's decree? The aberrations are growing stronger day by day. The front line is tight. Even the powerful dragon palaces of the Four Seas cannot transfer manpower. However, I heard that there is a demon beast in the Sky Martial continent that does not respect the dragon clan and calls himself the Blackwater Dragon King. The ancestral dragon does not like him, so he sent a decree from the Dragon God Palace, ordering us to capture the Blackwater Dragon King. Not long ago, the Blackwater Dragon King was tricked into the Endless Sea by the West Sea Dragon King. We went to the Willowstone Sea to capture him, but we did not expect to fall into his trap and be labeled as the one who destroyed the Willowstone Sea. The Dragon King was furious and ordered us to capture the Black Jiao to atone for our sins. Fu Gui put his hands behind his back and said arrogantly, Ao Siphon, I respect you as a senior, so I specially came here. You should know the weight of the ancestral dragon's decree in the Dragon God Palace, right? If you are willing to help us, the day that the Black Jiao is brought to justice will be the day your names are removed from the register of evil dragons and you return to the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. Ao Siphon was not moved. She still looked at Yazi and said indifferently, you know that's not what I meant when I asked about the decree. I mean, if you want me to protect you, you have to show me proof, right? You can't just say that you are following the Dragon King's order and you are following the Dragon King's order, right? Then, Ao Sifin paused and squeezed out a mocking smile on her face. She said coldly, I can also say that you have caused a great disaster and don't dare to return to the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. You want to deceive me and make the evil dragon camp and the Sea Monster Guild start a war. You, Fu Gui was choked by Ao Sifin's words. Her face was so gloomy that it looked like water was about to drip out. Yazi spat to the side and said with a gloomy face, Ao Sifin, who do you think you are? You are just an evil dragon. We are following the Dragon King's orders. We are not here to look at your face. We are here to look at the Dragon King's trust. Are you worthy? Hee hee. Ao Sifin sneered and stepped forward. He walked directly in front of Yazi and said coldly, what boldness. As expected of Yazi, the second of the 9 sons of the Dragon Clan. It seems that you haven't wasted these 50 years. Humph, Yazi snorted and had no intention of backing down. It continued to stare at Ao Sifin. In the generation 50 years ago, Ao Sifin and that person appeared out of nowhere and directly stepped on it and Shionyo. They were known as the Supreme Heaven's Pride of the Dragon Clan. They were so famous that even the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas had to show a kind face. To put it bluntly, it was not that the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas could not protect them. It was just that after weighing the gains and losses, they felt that there was no need to start a war with the Sea Demon Guild to protect them. If it was Ao Sifin or that person, the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas would most likely grit their teeth and forcefully suppress this matter. Although it was not the real Yazi, it had the records of the Dragon Clan's secret treasure. It also knew the real Yazi's character very well. Although it was not the kind of person who would seek revenge for the smallest grievance, it could not be a person who stepped on it for 50 years. Even now, it had fallen into an evil dragon and still had the protection of the Dragon Clan's elders. In the end, this was jealousy. Ao Sifin, how powerful is the Dragon King of the Four Seas? Looking at the entire endless sea, is there anyone who dares to impersonate the Dragon King? I have already said before that this time, we came to ask for help. If you don't want to, you can just reject us directly. Why do you have to be so aggressive? Fu Ji's expression was also not very good. He did not expect that Ao Sifin would dare to act like this. It was as if he did not put the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas in his eyes. Not only did the preemptive strike not work, but it also had the opposite effect. Now that Ao Sifin insisted that he wanted to see the West Sea Dragon King's trust, how could they take it out? I wish everyone a new year with no regrets in the past. The new year will still be in full bloom. Chapter 720. What does it have to do with you when the elders are talking? Ao Sifin turned his head and glanced at Fu Shi contemptuously, then looked at Yazi's face again. Yazi took a deep breath and growled, Ao Sifin, I advise you not to go too far. How can Dragon King's trust be granted so easily? You want to see Dragon King's trust as soon as you open your mouth. That's too much. I want to see Dragon King's trust is too much. Ao Sifin's mocking expression was even more intense. He said in a deep voice, then when you came over, you wanted my evil dragon camp to clean up your mess, take the blame, and even help you to make enemies with that black Jiao. What is this called? Pa. It was almost in a flash. Ao Sifin and Yazi had already punched each other. Ao Sifin took 3 steps back, but Yazi didn't move at all. The reef he was sitting on cracked inch by inch. In the blink of an eye, it turned into powder and drifted away with the undercurrent at the bottom of the sea. For a moment, it was impossible to tell who was superior between the two. However, even so, it still made Fu Zhu, who was at the side, suck in a breath of cold air. Long Jiuzi was one of the top combatants in the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. Even if he didn't go on missions, the resources he usually enjoyed were the best in the entire Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. Ao Sifin was an evil dragon. Although it had a great reputation in the past 50 years, it could only survive in the gaps between the various sea demon clans. Naturally, it couldn't manage a sea region that produced spiritual items. In addition, it had to support the evil dragons under its command. It probably had to fork out a lot of its own cultivation resources. Aptitude was the factor that determined whether a monster or a cultivator could reach a certain level, but it was definitely not the only factor. Abundant spiritual items were the most important thing. With the gap of 50 years of resources between the two, Yazi's cultivation progress in a day was probably more than 10 times that of Sifin. But in that punch just now, both sides were actually evenly matched. What kind of terrifying aptitude was this? You've made some progress. You didn't waste the resources of the Dragon Palace. Sifin wasn't annoyed. He calmly withdrew his fist and sneered, however, I thought you had the capital to stand proudly in the world after all these years. It turns out that you're just a so-so. So, you should treat me the same way you treated me 50 years ago. Do you understand? On what basis? Yazi's face was full of resistance, but he also retracted his fist and asked in a stern voice. Because I am stronger than you. Sifin also responded sternly, but his vertical pupils were filled with coldness. Those who were observant would be able to see that although Sifin had taken 3 steps back, her fist was still intact. On the other hand, although Yazi did not move at all, as if all the force had been transferred to the reef under it, its fist was constantly trembling. One could even vaguely see the blood splashing out when its skin and flesh were torn open. However, the dragon's physique was tyrannical, and the injury was instantly healed. Thus, it did not reveal a bloody fist with torn skin and flesh. So, it wasn't a tie. Fu Qian's expression changed slightly, and he sighed in his heart. Other than Sifin taking the initiative to protect him, Fu Xi even considered activating the spies of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas to control Sifin and take away his authority to control the evil dragon camp. However, such a scheme could only be dismissed with a smile at this moment. It was not difficult to control the evil dragon camp. The spies of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas could do it, but the prerequisite was to capture Sifin. Otherwise, with Sifin's prestige, he could make those evil dragons who did not belong to the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas to have evil intentions. By then, there would be another bloody battle. Perhaps the Sea Monster Guild, the Outer Sea Monsters, and the subordinates of the Dragon Palace would all help Sifin to completely crush the power of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. Yazi's face twitched slightly. After pondering for a moment, he gritted his teeth and said, "Please, save us." A satisfied look flashed across Sifin's face as soon as she finished speaking. Although the Sea Monster Guild is powerful, it is also a loose organization. It is not difficult to capture you too. As long as we pay a certain amount of benefits, we can hire a large number of experts to hunt you down. However, it is difficult for the Sea Monster Guild to bear the cost of waging a war with the evil dragon camp. So, if I help you, you will be safe. As long as you don't seek death and stay in the territory of the evil dragon camp, they can't do anything to you. Sifin grinned and said, "Everything in this world comes with a price. The Sea Monster Guild is afraid of me, so they will put pressure on me, which will make the situation of the evil dragon camp more difficult. So, I am very curious. What kind of bargaining chips do you have in your hands? Why do you have the confidence to let me protect you?" Yazi kept silent and took half a step back. In terms of fighting power, he could easily crush Fu Chu. However, he was not good at this kind of thing that required using his brain. Fu Chu pondered for a moment and looked around. Seeing more and more sea monsters gathering, he coughed to refresh himself and said softly, "We have enough bargaining chips. However, this is a serious matter. Let's go into the yard and talk. We don't want the walls to have ears and ruin our plan. Isn't it just that the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas can't resist the pressure of the mutant, so you want to go to the Sky Marshal continent? You want all the beasts in the Endless Sea to be your barrier to stop the mutant while you hide somewhere to recuperate. You want to take back your territory in the Endless Sea? If you dare to do that, why are you afraid of others talking about it? You want to capture this king and use the forces in the northern frontier to get a territory in the Sky Marshal continent for the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. Originally, you didn't want to bring the evil dragon camp. But now, because you can't send people, you have to borrow the evil dragon camp's power. That's why you changed your face and came here. Lin Yuan's lazy voice arose. He mocked, aren't the dragon palace of the four seas strong? Why don't you have your arrogant aura like before, asking for this king's treasure? Black Jiao, you dare to hide here? Yazi suddenly roared and stared at Lin Yuan, who appeared behind Ao Sifan. If it wasn't for the news of Lin Yuan's sudden appearance, it wouldn't have led Long Jiuzi to the Willowstone Sea. In the end, it was schemed against by Cyrus. Now, it couldn't find a place to stay in the endless sea. Now, Lin Yuan dared to appear in front of it. Kill. Boundless killing intent leaked out. Lin Yuan sneered as if he didn't care at all. Boom. An aura that wasn't inferior to Yazi's suddenly burst out from Ao Sifan's body. Blackwater Dragon King is my honored guest. Him coming to my residence as a guest is giving me, Ao Sifan, face. How can I allow you to be so presumptuous? It seems that the battle back then didn't scare the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas, right? Ao Sifan was furious. His eyes were also bloodshot as he stared at Yazi fiercely. Chapter 721. The hatred emitted from Ao Sifan's body was not the slightest bit inferior to Yazi. Yazi just wanted to vent its anger on Lin Yuan. No matter what, it was a beast that had lived for more than 70 years. Although it hadn't learned the cunning of human beings, it had experienced a lot. Of course, it wouldn't look at everything in this world as an ignorant person. How long had Black Jiao been in the endless sea? How long had it been since he came out? How long had Cyrus concealed its identity? The two of them could have met and colluded, but before that, they couldn't have known each other. Thus, Cyrus' plan in the Willowstone Sea was aimed at the dragon palaces of the Four Seas. Its purpose was to provoke the war between the Sea Monster Guild and the dragon palaces of the Four Seas. Lin Yuan was just an important supporting role in this drama. Of course, there was no irreconcilable hatred. Even if there was, it was aimed at Cyrus. However, Ao Sifan's resentment was aimed at the dragon palaces of the Four Seas. What was the cruelest thing in the world? It was to give others hope and then crush it with your own hands. 36 years ago, Ao Sifan became famous in one battle. He led the evil dragons to defeat the dragon palace of the Four Seas and took over the territory of the evil dragon camp. The evil dragon camp didn't wander around the sea area like rootless duckweeds anymore. Although the dragon palace of the Four Seas had been planting spies in the evil dragon camp and cultivating the root of the disaster, no one dared to say that the dragon palace of the Four Seas could ignore Ao Sifan's anger and start another war with him. In fact, for so many years, the dragon palaces of the Four Seas had always been kind to Ao Sifan. They didn't dare to have a dispute with him. They only dared to use a soft knife to cut off his flesh. Ao Sifan was a hero of a generation, so he could see through this. However, it was just like Song Jiang in the later period of the water margin. Ao Sifan clearly understood that although the evil dragon camp was strong, they were still rootless duckweeds. Their real position in the endless sea wasn't even comparable to some of the stronger species of the dragon palaces. That was why Ao Sifan sat and watched the dragon palaces of the Four Seas trying to recruit and assimilate the evil dragon's camp. He didn't mention any small disputes. He wanted to return to the dragon palaces of the Four Seas one day and use his own ideas to change the dragon palaces of the Four Seas. At least, he wanted the dragon palaces of the Four Seas to no longer despise the beasts without the dragon bloodline. He wanted to unify the endless sea. However, he did not expect his sincerity to be so laughable in the eyes of the dragon palace of the Four Seas. Unknowingly, it and its evil dragon faction had become abandoned pawns in the eyes of the dragon palace of the Four Seas. Laughable, lamentable, lamentable. Black Jiao, what nonsense are you talking about? Fu Gao shouted and said coldly, you are the blood descendant of the dragon race of the Four Seas, yet you don't want to be the ancestor of the dragon race. How dare you say that the dragon race is plotting to steal your treasure? Do you know how powerful the dragon palace of the Four Seas is? What you have is nothing but a laughable toy in our eyes. At this moment, Fu Su hated Lin Yuan to the core. This black arrow simply did not choose his words carefully and did not even care about the consequences. Was the aberrant a topic that could be made public? To put it bluntly, even the powerful dragon palace of the four seas was defeated by the aberrant. They had no choice but to consider entering the Tianwu continent to avoid the aberrant's sharp edge. However, this was an internal matter of the dragon palace of the four seas and could not be made public. Once the other demonic beasts in the endless sea discovered the terror of the aberrant, the dragon palace of the four seas would be put on fire. At that time, all the escape routes of the dragon palace of the four seas would be blocked. The entire dragon race of the four seas would have to fight the aberrant to the death. Even if they won, the dragon race of the four seas would be reduced to the lowest level of power in the Tianwu continent for a long time in the future. They might not even be comparable to the current northern frontier. More importantly, if Black Jiao was willing to cooperate with the dragon palace of the four seas, both sides could return to the Tianwu continent together. Although the northern frontier would definitely be angered by the powers of the Tianwu continent, they could also gain the goodwill of the dragon race of the four seas. Both sides working together might not necessarily lead to death. However, if these words were to be spread, before the chaos of the aberrant was resolved, Black Jiao himself would not be able to return to the Tianwu continent. This was King courting death. He even wanted to drag the dragon palace of the four seas down with him. Since all the seniors are paying attention to this, I will say these few words to fulfill my responsibility as a dragon bloodline demonic beast. I will say what the dragon palace of the four seas does not dare to say. At the same time, I will also stop the dragon palace of the four seas from thinking of escaping. Although I know the details of the aberrant, it is not convenient for me to tell you. The only thing I can say is that the aberrant's original intention is not to become the new overlord of the endless sea. They are plotting to conquer the entire world. If the dragon palace of the four seas retreats, none of you will be able to escape the fate of becoming monsters today. And even if the dragon palace of the four seas can escape to the Tianwu continent and be accepted by the powers of the Tianwu continent, they will not be able to escape the attacks of the aberrant. The longer these monsters are eliminated, the greater the danger. After today, I hope that all of you will have a better understanding of the aberrant. Do not think that just because you do not participate in the war against the aberrant, you will be able to take a step further under their rule or maintain your current life. If you do not believe my words, you can send people to the front lines of the dragon palace of the four seas to take a look and ask if this is the case. Lin Yuan bowed his head and said in a sincere tone, as long as the hidden danger of the aberrant is not eliminated, Black Jiao will not leave the endless sea. I hope that all of you seniors can bear witness to this. The demon beasts of the endless sea were not fools. Although the Sea Demon Guild was an idle organization, this kind of idleness also gave them a very powerful source of information. The news of Yazi and Fu Shi's appearance today would definitely not be hidden from the Sea Demon Guild, and even more so from the experts of the Sea Demon Guild who were paying attention to this matter. Although on the surface it was Yazi, Fu Shi, Ao Sifan, and Lin Yuan who were here, in the dark, who knew how many spies of the powers were hidden. Some of the experts might even come to a place not far from here to secretly investigate. He wanted to make this matter big, he wanted to stir up this pot of water. With his own strength, it was impossible to fight against the old ruler of the dragon palace of the four seas. Even if he forcefully pulled the dragon palace of the four seas, they might not be the opponent of the other party. He could only pull all the demon beasts of the endless sea onto the warship, only then could he guarantee a 50% chance of winning this war. In addition, the reconstruction of the Willowstone Sea area was about to be completed. The other sea demon forces would not let go of this fat meat. He did not need to provide any resources, and he did not need to fight against the super-strong demon beasts. How could the demon beasts refuse? Making this matter big and attracting the attention of the endless sea, it could also share some of the pressure of the Willowstone Sea area. Otherwise, before this nail of his could enter the endless sea, it would be a wedding dress for the other sea demon forces. Chapter 722. Lin Yuan's words made many sea demons who were paying attention change their expressions. Although the dragon clan of the four seas had been hiding the matter of the aberrant, there was no such thing as an impenetrable wall in the world. Although some people did not receive accurate first-hand information, they knew that the aberrant was very terrifying. They could even make the dragon clan of the Four Seas, who had always considered themselves the overlords of the endless sea, willingly give up their territory. Not only were the front lines retreating again and again, more and more sea demons were rushing to the battlefield. However, the aberrant's ferocity was only directed at the dragon clan of the Four Seas. After all, in order to safely evacuate the endless sea, the dragon clan of the Four Seas had always been on guard and did not want other sea demon clans to know about the aberrant. Therefore, for most sea demons, the war between the aberrant and the dragon palace of the Four Seas was just two huge forces fighting for territory. Even if the dragon palace of the Four Seas was the loser in the end, what did that have to do with them? A long, long time ago, the overlord of the endless sea was the whale clan. After the gate of heaven opened, the dragon clan of the Four Seas suddenly became the top of the food chain in the endless sea and became an overlord. Until today, as more and more sea demons appeared among the outer sea demons, there was constant friction between the two sides. There was also a sea demon guild that had quietly risen in the deep sea and had become a behemoth that even the dragon clan of the Four Seas had to avoid. In addition, over the years, the various dragon palaces had multiplied and produced many sea demons. The dragon palace of the Four Seas could no longer maintain its position as the overlord, resulting in the current awkward situation. However, as long as the dragon palace of the Four Seas existed, the sea demon clans in the endless sea would not dare to overstep their boundaries. If the aberrant were more powerful than the dragon palace of the Four Seas, then the sea demons of the endless sea would not make any futile efforts to resist. After all, they had been ruled for so many years, so there was no harm in changing the ruler. However, now that they heard Lin Yuan's words, it had a completely different meaning. The aberrant's goal was never to compete with the dragon palace of the Four Seas for the endless sea. Their goal was to destroy the entire world. They wanted to turn all the creatures in the world into aberrant monsters. This king's words are all true. If there's even half a sentence of falsehood, I'm willing to be skinned and have my tendons pulled out, and my soul destroyed. Seeing that the surrounding demonic beasts didn't respond, Lin Yuan gritted his teeth and emphasized again. Playing around was one thing, but when the system got serious, it was no joke. Although Lin Yuan didn't know what the spiritual sense he used to control the puppet's body had experienced, he was certain that the Great Old Ones had touched the system's reverse scale. The system was serious about eliminating these monsters. It had even mobilized all the hosts under its command, as if it was not going to leave a place for the Great Old Ones in the myriad worlds. Even Lin Yuan could not help but feel a chill run down his spine. In this mission, it was likely that quite a few hosts would be directly kicked out by the system, and from then on, they would be reduced to a member of an ordinary monster clan. They would never be able to encounter such a huge opportunity again in their lifetime. Even if there was a day when the storm would surge in the future, they would no longer have the slightest connection with them. They might not even have the qualifications to be a spectator. How sad was that? Lin Yuan wasn't willing to be such a pathetic existence. Therefore, he had to complete the mission that the system had mobilized all the hosts to carry out. In addition, other than the system, the demonic beasts of the endless sea were also a big problem. They wouldn't choose to pretend to be deaf and mute after knowing about Lin Yuan's existence. After all, the dragon palace of the Four Seas with Lin Yuan in hand was completely different from the previous dragon palace of the Four Seas. If the dragon palace of the Four Seas persuaded Lin Yuan to cooperate, they could withdraw from the endless sea at any time and move the headquarters of the dragon clan of the Four Seas to the Sky Marshal continent. However, without Lin Yuan to play a neutral role, not to mention the demonic beasts of the Hengduan mountain range who would not tolerate the demonic beasts of the ocean demonic beasts fighting for territory, even the top experts of the human race would not sit idly by. If Lin Yuan did not express his stance, he would soon die an unnatural death. Previously, when they did not know about the dangers of the aberrant, the demonic beasts of the endless sea only hoped to delay the dragon clan of the Four Seas as much as possible and let the aberrant heavily injure the dragon clan of the Four Seas so that they could divide and devour them. Firstly, they could avenge the enmity of being enslaved for many years, and secondly, they could strengthen their own clan's power. Now that they knew the danger of the aberrations, they would not let the dragon clan of the four seas leave the endless sea. After all, the dragon clan of the four seas had been fighting the aberrations all this time. Although they seemed to have suffered heavy casualties, they were barely able to stabilize the situation. It was obvious that they had researched a set of tactics to deal with the aberrations. If the dragon clan of the four seas were to run away and let them deal with the aberrations in an ignorant state, who knew what kind of price they would have to pay? Therefore, Lin Yuan had to express his stance and stand on the side of the endless sea's demonic beasts. He had to keep the dragon palace of the four seas to deal with the aberrations. As for the rage of the dragon palace of the four seas, the demonic beasts of the endless sea would naturally protect him. Why? Now, in the entire endless sea, besides the dragon clan of the four seas, Lin Yuan was the only one who understood the aberrations. Just like how they had cheated the dragon clan of the four seas, once the opportunity came, the dragon clan of the four seas would definitely think of a way to get back at them. If he closed his eyes and listened to the orders of the dragon clan of the four seas, he wouldn't even know how he died. Black Jiao. You've gone too far. Yazi's eyes were crimson red, and he was obviously furious. Even when he saw Ao Sifan, who had suppressed him since birth, and was forced to lower his head and beg for peace, Yazi didn't show a look of anger. But at this moment, after Lin Yuan spoke, the anger in Yazi's heart burned fiercely. As the second son of the dragon clan and a senior member of the dragon clan of the four seas, Yazi had access to countless secrets. Except for the several ancestral dragons and the previous dragon king of the four seas, no one knew more details than Yazi. Therefore, from the moment Lin Yuan chose to reveal the truth, Yazi knew that the dragon clan of the four seas was finished. Today, Lin Yuan's words would spread to the entire endless sea at an unusually fast speed. At that time, although the endless sea's demonic beasts would unite to resist the invasion of the aberrations, the dragon clan of the four seas would be firmly tied to the war chariot. No matter the direction of the war, the dragon clan of the four seas would not have a good ending. This Black Jiao, no. This guy is not the Black Jiao at all. At this moment, Lin Yuan was like a poisonous snake in the eyes of Yazi, slowly piercing his poisonous fangs into the body of the behemoth called the dragon race of the four seas, injecting a lethal amount of venom into it little by little. But it couldn't stop it. It didn't even need to try to know that once it stopped Lin Yuan from telling the truth, the demonic beasts hiding nearby would definitely swarm over and directly tear it apart. Chapter 723. Ao Sifan's figure moved slightly, and he changed his direction without changing his expression. He blocked the path that Yazi must pass through to rush to Lin Yuan. His aura was firmly locked on Yazi. It seemed that as long as Yazi dared to act rashly, he would brazenly attack. As an outsider and an abandoned existence, Ao Sifan had always played the role of a supporting role in this game. It didn't even know where this game came from, what role Lin Yuan played in it, and what his purpose was. But it didn't matter. From the moment it knew the truth, Ao Sifan's heart of sincerity towards the dragon palace of the four seas had already died. Right now, it only wanted to be responsible for itself, for the evil dragons under its command. As for what would happen to the dragon palace of the four seas in the future, it was none of its business as an abandoned child. Perhaps Lin Yuan was right. The current dragon palace of the four seas was indeed rotten to the bone, and the stubborn disease was difficult to eradicate. It had to experience a destructive blow before it could be broken and rebuilt, and once again show the true spirit of the dragon clan of the four seas, instead of living in a self-made dream to deceive itself. I repeat, the Black Jiao is my guest. Ao Sifan coldly stared at Yazi, its vertical pupils were filled with coldness, and its voice was as shrill as a ghost. If you dare to touch the Black Jiao, I, Ao Sifan, will give up the 30 years of bitter cultivation and kill you on the spot. Fu Jian, I will delay Ao Sifan, you go and kill that Black Jiao. Yazi's eyes were still red, as if it wasn't the one who lowered its head to beg for peace. With a fierce tone, it strode forward and faced Ao Sifan head-on. Those who were good at fighting were decisive. For the dragon palace of the four seas, Lin Yuan was a way to survive, but that was the Lin Yuan of the past. Now, Lin Yuan's identity could no longer be concealed in the endless sea. Who knew how many sea demon experts were hiding in the dark, watching his every move? Before the aberration was completely eradicated, if Lin Yuan had any thoughts of returning to the Tianwu continent, he would immediately be killed by the sea demon experts. On top of that, the Dragon King of the West Sea had yet to obtain the dragonization technique from Lin Yuan. Even though he had imprisoned Lin Yuan, he had failed to obtain it. Instead, he had brought trouble upon himself. Therefore, Lin Yuan's value was already very low. It could even be said that he was better than nothing. In that case, there was no need for Lin Yuan to exist. Although there was no evidence, Yazi's intuition was telling him that Lin Yuan's understanding of the aberration might be much more than the dragon clan of the Four Seas that fought the aberration day and night. It just didn't want to say it out loud. Since the dragon clan of the Four Seas was forcefully tied to the war chariot by Lin Yuan, then they had to choose a good position. The fewer people like Lin Yuan who knew, the higher the status of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas, and the safer the members of the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas would be. Heh! Hearing Yazi's low roar, Lin Yuan had no intention of retreating. He even sneered. That arrogant look was not something that could be casually faked. You bastard, you still dare to laugh. Fu Zi, who was originally standing to the side, was also angered by Lin Yuan's attitude. He immediately pointed his claws at Lin Yuan and roared sternly. Why aren't you laughing? Don't you think it's funny that you're overestimating yourself? Lin Yuan said with a smile, his tone mixed with ridicule and ridicule. This guy, Ao Siphon's expression changed several times. Lin Yuan was clearly fanning the flames. His goal was to provoke Yazi and Fu Zi to attack. But why was it like this? It was very obvious, but why did Yazi and Fu Zi not seem to notice it? Instead, they were really angered by Lin Yuan's sudden arrogance and ridicule. What was Lin Yuan's goal? To make it kill Yazi and completely cut off the possibility of peace between the evil dragon camp and the dragon palace of the Four Seas? Or was he setting up a trap to attract some moths to the flame and let more forces be involved in this mess? Thinking of this, Ao Siphon's face showed a troubled expression. Although he was no longer loyal to the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas, he couldn't deny that he was born in the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. Seeing his own people in trouble, he really couldn't be ruthless. However, other than his own people in the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas, he still had a group of brothers under his command who were waiting for him to lead the way. If he abandoned the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas and wholeheartedly joined Lin Yuan, then it was very important to guess his attitude. It was even directly related to whether Lin Yuan's next actions would be affected or not. Unknowingly, Ao Siphon had already put himself in the position of a chess piece and considered himself a subordinate of Lin Yuan. Although his strength and prestige far surpassed Lin Yuan's, Ao Siphon didn't seem to realize this at all. Fu Zi, I advise you to stop. The smile on Lin Yuan's face disappeared, and he said coldly, It is said in the endless sea that Fu Zi, one of the 9 sons of the Dragon Clan, is gentle and good at strategizing. However, after seeing you today, I realize that it's just bullshit. If an idiot like you can call yourself a strategist, then all the people in the world who rely on their intelligence to make a living will be so angry that they will chop you into minced meat. Fu Zi didn't seem to hear Lin Yuan's warning at all. He still stepped closer to Lin Yuan, and his vertical pupils flashed with killing intent. He looked like he wouldn't stop until he killed Lin Yuan. He knew that there were many sea demon experts who were paying attention to this place. But, so what? The strength of those sea demon experts was about the same as him. Most of them were even weaker than him. Not to mention that it would take some time for them to rush over, even if they all gathered here. As long as Ao Siphon didn't interfere, Fu Zi was confident that he could kill Lin Yuan. Your brain is a good thing. Unfortunately, you don't have it. Seeing that Fu Zi didn't have the slightest intention to stop, Lin Yuan shook his head gently, and his face regained his playful expression. Where was this place? The headquarters of the evil dragon camp. Under the premise of offending the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas, the evil dragons dared to set up a base, so they naturally had enough force to protect this mansion. At least, they could deal with the surprise attack of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas calmly. Would Siphon be the only one guarding this place? Did they really think that the 8 distresses in the evil dragon camp, who were as famous as the 9 sons of the dragon clan, were just decorations? After knowing the cause and effect, and with Siphon's declaration, even if these evil dragons were the spies of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas, at this moment, they gave up on the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. After all, no one would be loyal to an existence that would always abandon them. Unless the other party had done them a great favor that they had to repay. However, that kind of story obviously wouldn't happen to the Dragon Clan, who considered themselves as nobles. They not only looked down on demonic beasts without dragon bloodline, but also demonic beasts with dragon bloodline whose bloodline purity wasn't high. In such a big environment, it would be good if the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas didn't become enemies with each other. How could there be a bond between them? Chapter 724. Black Jiao, give me your life. Fu Zi roared as he quickened his pace, almost jogging, as if he was worried that Lin Yuan would slip away under his nose. You are really courting death. A cold light flashed in Lin Yuan's eyes. Almost at the moment when Fu Zi opened his mouth, 2 black shadows rushed out of the house one after the other, directly facing Fu Zi, who was gradually revealing his monster body. The 3 of them instantly fought together, fighting back and forth. Compared to the stalemate between Siphon and Yazi, it was naturally much more pleasing to the eye. Even though the 2 evil dragons who went out to fight were not as strong as negative in all aspects, they looked very similar, as if they were brothers born from the same mother. They cooperated with each other quite well, and when they raised their hands, there was a kind of joint attack that rose fiercely. They were actually able to fight on equal grounds with Negative, who had been blinded by anger and had gone all out. The evil dragon camp and the dragon clan of the Four Seas were fighting. Looking at the messy battlefield in front of him, Lin Yuan's heterochromatic eyes flashed with light. The next moment, another 3 auras skyrocketed. They were 3 Monster King realm existences. Lin Yuan took a closer look and immediately realized that the other party was the members of Long Jiuzi who had participated in the arrest of him. Obviously, they had arrived here early, but they did not show up immediately. They planned to set up an ambush. Now that Lin Yuan had sent Siphon and the monster brothers to stop Yazi and Fu Zi, the remaining 3 Dragon Clan members naturally could not sit still. Their figures flew over, wanting to help Yazi and Fu Zi, but before they could take a few steps, they were stopped by a group of monsters whose average strength was around the Monster King realm, but there was no lack of monsters at the River Lord realm. The Sea Monster Guild also intervened. The light in Lin Yuan's eyes was even brighter. Although there might be some monsters in the Endless Sea who wanted to protect him, there were actually not many who had the courage to directly put it into practice, and among them, only the Sea Monster Guild dared to attack the members of the Dragon Clan without any scruples. The 2 major forces in the Endless Sea were finally facing each other. If the evil dragon camp, a special force that wasn't even a first-rate force, or a second-rate one, joined the fight, the dragon race of the Four Seas would have to shed a layer of skin. When this matter is over, Lin Yuan will eventually return to the northern region. At that time, it can be said that he will take over the territory of the Shenwu dynasty. However, at that time, Lin Yuan will need to pay a huge amount of manpower and material resources to clean up the remaining demons and the group of disciples of the demons sect who claimed to be the hidden sect. It is impossible to be distracted for a short time. Lin Yuan couldn't accept the fact that the Ocean Yao beasts were like nomadic clans, and they always wanted to go ashore to take whatever they lacked. He wasn't willing to accept this either. Therefore, he had to teach these guys a lesson. 10 minutes later. Willow Rock Seas, Domain Master's Manor. Jiao Yi, who was wearing an underwater mineral armor, suddenly changed his expression and kept nodding. At the same time, he sent a message to Cyrus with a complicated expression. Our God has just sent a new decree. The Endless Sea is in chaos, and the Sea Monster Guild has even openly attacked the members of the Dragon Clan. There will definitely be a battle between the 2 sides. Our God wants us to be prepared and use this opportunity to scheme for everything that is valuable to us. Jiao Yi, who was complaining about the crude mineral armor and even calling it armor, suddenly changed his expression and turned to look at Cyrus with an indifferent expression. Cyrus was slightly stunned. It had been observing the gray-scaled flood dragon person for a while. Although it didn't know how the Black Jiao did it, he could indeed contact Jiao Yi remotely. However, most of the time, it was Jiao Yi reporting information about the Willow Rock Seas and the gray-scaled flood dragon person to Lin Yuan, and Lin Yuan would occasionally give some suggestions. However, this time, Lin Yuan took the initiative to send a message to Jiao Yi. That meant, the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas and the Sea Monster Guild had really made a move. Although all of this was within Cyrus's calculations, it wasn't confident about the result. If it was 100 or 200 years ago, the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas would definitely fight the Sea Monster Guild head-on. However, now, the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas' spine had been broken by the aberrations, and they even had to give up the territories in the endless sea that they had been operating for a long time. How could they fall out with the Sea Monster Guild over a few replaceable members of the Dragon Clan? Could it be that those Dragon Clan members were some kind of incredible existence? The Dragon Palace of the Four Seas would rather start a war on two fronts than give up on them to appease the Sea Monster Guild. Cyrus reached out to touch its smooth and round chin, and a sharp light flashed in its eyes. It said in a deep voice, "Contact Black Jiao and ask him about the situation over there. When will the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas and the Sea Monster Guild start fighting? If there's still time, I can think of a way to lure the sea monsters into the trap and defeat the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas in one fell swoop. The Sea Monster Guild has already made a move on the members of the Dragon Clan. The evil dragon camp is also on our side under my god's plan. I heard that many sea monster clans and dragon palaces have taken the opportunity to declare independence from the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas and become independent forces. Once the war starts, these independent forces won't just stand by and watch the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas get through this crisis. They will definitely send troops to help." First Flood Dragon fiddled with the armor on his body and said indifferently, "Cyrus, if you have any more tricks up your sleeve, you'd better use them as soon as possible. Otherwise, when I show my might, you won't have much of a role in this show." This sentence could be said to have scratched Cyrus's itch. As a notorious villain in the Endless Sea, what Cyrus wanted was nothing more than a name. Either his name would go down in history or his name would go down in infamy. Although Lin Yuan was in the limelight, the fact that the Endless Sea could have such a situation today was indeed due to its planning and layout. It borrowed Lin Yuan's influence to make Long Jiuzi bear the blame for the destruction of the Willowstone Sea area. However, no one knew about this matter except for Lin Yuan, and it was not stupid enough to explain it to other monsters. Wouldn't that be destroying the great situation that it had created? Now that the situation was turbulent, if it did not show its name now, this big show that it had directed would have nothing to do with it at all. "I'll go and contact the demonic beasts from the outer sea." Cyrus's eyes lit up. He stood up and walked toward his residence with a smile. "The demonic beasts from the outer sea, Cyrus, have all joined the plan. Congratulations, my god. The situation is set. The Dragon Palace of the Four Seas is in danger." Even though Lin Yuan could not see it, Jiao Yi still bowed respectfully and prayed in his heart. Although it had not been long since they were born, when they were created, the system had already stuffed a large amount of knowledge and memories into the first batch of Flood Dragon people. With Lin Yuan's constant guidance and a genius like Cyrus by his side, Jiao Yi grew very quickly. He was no longer the minion that could only follow Lin Yuan's orders. Chapter 725. Two flowers bloomed, one on each side. His gaze returned to Lin Yuan's side. The monster brothers and Fu Zhu were still fighting. The other three Dragon Jiuzi members were intercepted by the Siren Guild. Everything was still under control. Nothing unexpected happened. Furthermore, the number of monster beasts participating in the battle against the Dragon Jiuzi was increasing. It was obvious that the Siren Guild was not the only one contributing. Who would have thought that today's changes were all caused by Lin Yuan, who had not even reached the Monster King realm? Cyrus had used his own plans to change the situation. There was no other way. The Dragon Palace of the Four Seas must be destroyed. Although the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas had the bloodline of the Dragon clan and had connections with the ancient demon court, to Lin Yuan, they were not close. They were not even as close as the demonized black tortoise that sealed itself in the forbidden area of the northern frontier's underwater secret realm. Since the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas coveted his things, why couldn't he covet their territories? It was not that he did not know the immensity of heaven and earth. It was just that although the gray-scaled flood dragon person was an amphibious species, it was not suitable for the Hengduan mountain range that was surrounded by forests. As a species that was not considered strong to begin with, if the gray-scaled flood dragon person entered the Hengduan mountain range and lost its geographical advantage, it would not be of any help to Lin Yuan. Instead, it would become a member of the menu of other monster beasts. He spent a large amount of incense power to create a clan. He could not possibly send them to other monster beasts, right? Of course, there were tribes in the Hengduan mountain range that were not as good as the gray-scaled flood dragon person. For example, the mountain-shaking ape tribe that was loyal to Lin Yuan. However, they had the support of their ancestor. Strictly speaking, the mountain-shaking ape bloodline was a species derived from the sacred heart ape king, Suhebru. It was fine to kill one or two of them. However, if you exterminated the mountain-shaking ape tribe, you would be declaring that you would not rest until you were dead. However, who was behind the gray-scaled flood dragon person? It was Lin Yuan. Right now, he was undoubtedly in an awkward position in the Hengduan mountain range. Firstly, the demonic beasts in the Hengduan mountain range had to rely on the Northern Region Chamber of Commerce under his command to live a better life. Secondly, he was the strongest contender to be the next beast master of the Hengduan mountain range. Therefore, the Hengduan mountain range could watch as Lin Yuan grew stronger in the northern frontier. They even tried their best to provide Lin Yuan with convenience. However, this didn't mean that the demon beasts that had participated in the competition for the position of beast master would watch Lin Yuan's power and influence in the Hengduan mountain range increase again. In that case, the only place suitable for the gray-scaled flood dragon people to live and reproduce was the endless sea. At the very least, they possessed the pure bloodline of the water flood dragon. Naturally, they would be taken care of by the sin dragon or other dragon bloodline Yao beasts. They would not be wiped out directly. However, before this nail pierced in, Lin Yuan had to sweep the endless sea aside. Even if he couldn't do it with his own strength, he had to borrow the momentum to do it. In Lin Yuan's mind, he had a rough idea of how to do it. He would refer to the Great Qing dynasty's way of doing things, using slaves to control slaves. In his previous life, as a Han Chinese, Lin Yuan didn't have a good impression of the Qing dynasty. If it wasn't for the Qing dynasty sealing off their country and forbidding the development of firearms from the Great Ming dynasty, how would it have caused the series of tragedies that followed? Before the Great Qing dynasty, which one of them wasn't at the top of the world? Even the Meng Yuan dynasty, which wasn't ruled by Han Chinese, was a powerful existence that had once swept across the Eurasian continent. However, if one ignored the bad side and only looked at the schemes of the emperor, the Qing dynasty was indeed a master. They used the dirty method of using slaves to control slaves. Instead, it made the enslaved people less dissatisfied with the Qing dynasty. Instead, they fought to become the slave that ruled over the other slaves. Although this move was self-destructive, it was still a good move. In a sense, this move helped the Qing dynasty avoid the old path that the Meng Yuan dynasty had taken. Towards the forces under their rule, such as the aristocratic families, they had a simple and crude word: kill. In the beginning, there would be resistance. However, just like today's northern frontier, as long as they survived the backlash, they could do whatever they wanted. Therefore, in the later period of the Qing dynasty, the imperial power could be said to be supreme. Those aristocratic families who were once arrogant had their backs broken. In other words, after the Han dynasty, they changed from the backbone of the Han dynasty to the parasites of the Han dynasty. They only thought about their own family's interests. They manipulated the changes of the imperial power, and when they went out on expeditions, they became the hindrance of the dynasty. The Qing dynasty's massacre had taught these aristocratic families the simplest way to survive: kowtow more and talk less. In Lin Yuan's hands, this move was used in the endless sea. Lin Yuan didn't feel that there was anything wrong with it. After all, the one who would be affected in the end wouldn't be him. Although the matter of the Great Old Ones had been exposed by Lin Yuan, these sea demons certainly wouldn't easily believe Lin Yuan. They would each use their own forces to investigate this matter and see if it was really as Lin Yuan said. After all, although Lin Yuan was an outsider, he was still considered to have the bloodline of the dragon clan. If they blindly believed in Lin Yuan, they would have to worry about being used as a knife by the dragon palace. During this period, although the sea demon experts would be responsible for Lin Yuan's safety, they wouldn't do their best. However, the dragon clan of the Four Seas, who knew what the aberrant was, would never let go of someone like Lin Yuan. Before the various forces investigated the situation of the Great Old Ones, the dragon clan of the Four Seas would spare no effort to assassinate Lin Yuan to ensure that the dragon clan of the Four Seas had absolute control of the aberrant. Seeing that Fu Qiu was entangled by the demon brothers, Yazi fiercely ground its teeth and said in a deep voice, "Ao Sifan, you're from the dragon clan of the Four Seas. Are you going to watch this black Jiao destroy the dragon palace of the Four Seas?" Yazi, from now on, the evil dragon is the evil dragon, and the dragon clan of the Four Seas is the dragon clan of the Four Seas. Ao Sifan sneered. It talked about friendship with the dragon clan of the Four Seas, but the dragon clan of the Four Seas abandoned it. Now that the dragon palace of the Four Seas was in trouble, they wanted to play the friendship card. Did they really think it was a fool? Yazi, I won't argue with you. For the sake of our friendship in the past, if you retreat now, I can pretend that you never came here today. Get lost. Ao Sifan stared coldly at Yazi. Yazi almost laughed out of anger. Now that Lin Yuan had exposed the matter of the mutant, the Sea Demon Guild had directly attacked Longzhouzi. He didn't know how many Sea Demon powerhouses were hiding nearby, waiting to take his head to the Sea Demon Guild in exchange for a reward. If the power of the evil dragon camp couldn't protect him, he would die today. Leave? Go where? Can't ask for it, can't resent it. Are you still not going to make a move? Yazi ground its teeth, and the sound of its voice shook the surrounding sea water endlessly. As his voice fell, two incomparably tyrannical auras rose from the courtyard behind Ao Sifan. Obviously, there were also spies from the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas among the 8 distresses that had been fighting with Longzhouzi. Chapter 726. In the base of the evil dragon camp, besides Ao Sifan, there were 2 of the 8 distresses assisting Ao Sifan to guard this place. However, these 2 distresses were not fixed. They would be replaced every 10 days. The other 6 distresses were rarely seen. They were almost always dealing with their own affairs. This time, the Desireless Society and the Resentment Society were in charge of guarding the base. Both of them were spies of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. Only a fool would believe that the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas was not involved in this. Thinking of the arrogant attitude of Yazi and Fu Su when they came out, Ao Sifan's face darkened slightly. She said coldly, "I was wondering why the little brother who had been suppressed by me for decades suddenly had such a big change in personality. He even dared to provoke me. It turns out that you have been preparing to seize the power for a long time." 2 demonic beasts, who were also in human form, but still had their heads, claws and teeth, appeared behind Lin Yuan. Their cold eyes fell on Lin Yuan, as if they were thinking about how to attack him. Desireless Society and the Resentment Society, you 2 are senior members of the evil dragon camp. I believe that I didn't know that the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas had abandoned us, and neither did you. Now that you know the truth, do you still choose to stand on the side of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas? Ao Sifan was still vigilant in case Yazi attacked, and her voice trembled slightly. Desireless Society and the Resentment Society were both in the middle stage of the Demonic King realm. Whether it was capturing or killing, they could easily deal with Lin Yuan, a demonic beast in the late stage of the River Lord realm. However, Ao Sifan couldn't spare any more masters to protect Lin Yuan. The 2 demonic beast brothers who were entangling Fu Su were adopted by Ao Sifan after he betrayed the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. Although their cultivations were not as high as the middle stage of the Demonic King realm, they were born with the same mind and were very good at joint attacks. However, they could only entangle Fu Su. The one on the left had a head that resembled a ferocious tiger, with cheeks on both sides of its face. Its height was also close to 2.3 meters. Although it wasn't considered tall in the world of demonic beasts, in the world of humans, this kind of body could already be considered a small giant. Obviously, this Chiobu's shape-shifting technique was far from perfect. The resentment on the right looked more like a human being, and it was a little old man about 70 or 80 years old, wearing linen clothes. He stared at Lin Yuan with a stooped body, but the back of his head was not silver-white hair, but transparent tentacles that were constantly squirming. Desireless Society sneered and said coldly, "Supreme Dragon Head's words are biased. We are evil dragons who violated the rules of the Dragon Palace. No matter how the Dragon Palace deals with us, we deserve it. However, our bloodline and cultivation were all given to us by the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas. Without the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas, we wouldn't be here." He paused and glanced at Lin Yuan. He said coldly, "Since the Dragon Palace wants the Black Jiao's life, we will take his life. It's better than the Supreme Dragon Head who would rather fall out with the clan that gave birth to you to protect an outsider, right? Do you really think I'm someone who can be trampled on?" The arrogance on Lin Yuan's face slowly disappeared. His eyes were extremely cold. 2 balls of black water surged out from his black scales. In just a moment, they condensed into the Warden and the Fish Head, 2 early Demon King level existences. Their skin was pitch black like ink, and their eyes were dim and lifeless. However, the moment they raised their heads, the ruthlessness that surged out almost made the 2-8 bitterness level evil dragons, unable to desire and the society of resentment, feel their hearts palpitate slightly. Lin Yuan had been in the Endless Sea for a long time. Some of his strange techniques had been recorded by the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. Therefore, the moment the Warden and the fish-headed man appeared, the 2-8 bitter evil dragons' faces were already gloomy. They even subconsciously took a step back and didn't dare to look at Lin Yuan as unscrupulously as before. It seemed that only now did they realize that even if Lin Yuan was alone, they couldn't do anything to him. Lin Yuan had 2 demonic beasts at the early stage of the Monster King realm guarding him, and no matter how hard he tried to kill them, he couldn't kill them. With such combat power, he wouldn't dare to say that he could dominate the Endless Sea, but in this sea area, unless the Evil Dragon Camp, the Sea Monster Guild, and the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas joined forces to kill Lin Yuan, they could only return empty-handed. The smell of gunpowder started to spread around. Except for the sea demons who were attacking, the rest of the spectators all stepped back. They were afraid that they would be killed if they got involved. "Something's not right," Lin Yuan muttered in a low voice. The 2-8 bitter evil dragons looked at Lin Yuan with fear. Although they said nice things, they didn't seem to want to attack. It seemed, they just wanted to restrain Lin Yuan and attract Lin Yuan's attention. Were they just pretending, but they didn't want to risk their lives for the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas? Or were they just a smokescreen? Did the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas have other killing moves? The assassins of the 9 sons of the Dragon King had their own opponents. The 2-8 bitter evil dragons didn't attack. If they had other killing moves, the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas couldn't do it themselves. Even if the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas could send more people, they didn't have the guts to do it. If the evil dragons expelled from the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas attacked Lin Yuan, it would be fine. No matter who they were loyal to, the Dragon Palace could avoid being blamed. However, if the Dragon Palace members attacked the Dragon Palace, it meant that they were determined to offend all the other forces in the Endless Sea. Clang! A light sound came from behind. It was too late for Lin Yuan to turn around. He subconsciously felt his scalp go numb. The golden body secrets were activated instantly, and the black scales turned into golden scales in the blink of an eye. At the same time, Lin Yuan also felt a huge force coming from behind him, which almost pushed his whole body out. The courtyard wall in front of him directly collapsed, and he fell into the courtyard. Lin Yuan felt that he had slid across at least half of the courtyard, which was a distance of more than 3,000 meters. The golden scales on his body cracked inch by inch, turning into fine powder and slowly sprinkling down. The black scales on Lin Yuan's body were exposed once again as the golden powder scattered all over the ground. Looking at the golden body tactic on his attribute panel, Lin Yuan's eyes flashed with a touch of bitterness. Although this martial arts skill was rated as mediocre by the system, it was still the martial arts skill that had helped Lin Yuan the most since he had transmigrated to this world. Previously, there had been situations where his progress had been reduced. However, this was the first time that his progress had been reset to 0. Just now, what had happened? The perfect golden body tactic had 65% damage immunity. Under such circumstances, it was shattered by a blow. He didn't even have the strength to stand up. How powerful was this blow? Chapter 727. After panting for a moment, Lin Yuan recovered some of his strength. However, he still lay there without moving, secretly observing the existence that had ambushed him through the eye of God. After using up all 3 probing chances, Lin Yuan still couldn't see the other party's status panel. However, he could still recognize the other party's identity, a human. In the endless sea, where demonic beasts ran rampant, where no one without dragon bloodline could enter, a human actually appeared here? Lin Yuan was sure that this human was definitely not a demonic beast that had transformed. In fact, even Ning Tianqing's transformation could be considered successful. However, he still had demonic beast tattoos on his body and would unknowingly emit demonic qi. Although most of the demonic beasts in the endless sea had begun to transform, they still retained most of their demonic beast characteristics. They could barely be considered as humanoid monsters. Even the gray-scaled flood dragon person under Lin Yuan's command couldn't compare to them. Moreover, although the person who had ambushed Lin Yuan was standing at the bottom of the sea, the earth energy in his body was majestic, constantly preventing the undercurrents from approaching. This was completely different from the demonic beasts that liked water. Through the observation of the eye of God, Lin Yuan could even see the reverence in the eyes of some of the nearby sea demon experts. It seemed that the human who had ambushed Lin Yuan was an extraordinary existence. Just like how the humans on the Tianwu continent ostracized the demonic beasts, even in a place like the northern frontier, the demonic beasts could barely coexist peacefully with the humans. In the dark corners that Lin Yuan couldn't see, there were still countless demonic beasts and humans who were hostile to each other, even killing each other. However, both sides had a tacit understanding to clean up the mess before dawn. At least on the surface, the northern frontier was still a beautiful place where humans and demonic beasts coexisted. However, in the northern frontier, when humans and demonic beasts saw each other, most of them would look at each other with contempt, hostility, or even hatred. There was no reverence or respect at all. The former was not a big deal. After all, the northern frontier was a harsh place. Countless humans who entered the Hengduan mountain range to make a living had lost their lives to the claws and fangs of the Yao beasts. There were also countless Yao beasts who were killed by the Yao beasts before they could mature. Their bodies were dismembered into countless valuable materials and sold in the human cities. The two sides had long since formed a death grudge. Without 2 or 3 generations of descendants, this grudge would never be resolved. But even if this hatred was resolved, both sides were still 2 different races. At most, they would just ignore each other. Lin Yuan felt that even if he lived until the green leaf water lotus bloomed and bore fruit, he might not be able to see it. This human must be incredible. Fisherman, that brat isn't dead yet. Why don't you go up and finish him off? Xiao Budi crossed his arms in front of his chest, a hint of fear flashing in his eyes as he asked softly. I only owe the West Sea Dragon Palace a sword strike. The fisherman turned his head to glance at Wu Yu and said indifferently, I have fulfilled my promise. From tomorrow onwards, I will leave the endless sea and return to the Sky Martial continent. Whoever stops me will die. Although the fisherman replied, he did not open his mouth. His words were filled with the sound of surging sword qi. As soon as he finished speaking, the fisherman sheathed his sword and walked towards the outer sea with an expressionless face. The Resentment Society smiled bitterly and shook its head. Like a little old man, it bent its body and slowly approached Lin Yuan with its hands behind its back. Since the fisherman was not willing to finish him off, it could only do it itself. As for whether Lin Yuan had any backup plans, that was not its concern. If they could not kill Lin Yuan today, the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas would take their lives. Looks like the Dragon Tribe of the Four Seas really wants me dead. Lin Yuan lay on the ground as a fierce look flashed across his eyes. This fisherman was definitely not an ordinary person. At least, with Lin Yuan's understanding of the Sky Martial Continent, it was impossible for the current sects and empires to produce such an outstanding disciple. This person was either from the Heavenly Gate Protectors faction, or he was like Yang Qinglin of the Divine Blood sect who had been hibernating in the northern frontier. He had also fallen in an ancient battle but had set up a backup plan and was reborn in the future. Such an existence owed the West Sea Dragon Palace a sword strike, but the benefits that he could bring to the West Sea Dragon Palace would definitely not be as simple as a sword strike. But today, the West Sea Dragon Palace had resolutely activated the fisherman and stabbed Lin Yuan with his sword. Although the fisherman did not kill Lin Yuan, under the 65% damage reduction, he still knocked Lin Yuan to the ground. He had not recovered even after 10 breaths of time. With such an injury, if Lin Yuan had not activated the golden body technique in time, according to the system's calculations, this injury would have been more than enough to kill him 3 times over. And this was just a casual sword strike from the fisherman. When the guy said, "Whoever stops me will die," he was really stating a fact, and not threatening the unfulfilled wish and resentment society. "Tao Tai, are you still not going to make a move?" Lin Yuan lay on the ground and struggled to turn over. He glanced at the warden and fishhead who were being restrained by the resentment society and could only raise his head and roar. There was a gap of 2 realms between him and the demonic king realm. If he wanted to fight against the resentment society that was determined to kill him without external help, it would be a fool's dream. In the web novels in Lin Yuan's previous life, fighting above one's level seemed to be a constant topic. As long as one was called a genius, almost all of them could easily defeat opponents 1 or 2 levels higher. But in reality, this kind of fighting above one's level became more and more impossible the further one progressed. After all, even if there was a gap in attributes in the early stages, it would only be a difference of a few or 10 points. It was not difficult to fight above one's level with ruthlessness and methods, especially for someone like Lin Yuan who had added points to himself. Although he had not broken through his realm, his various attributes had already reached the peak of his current realm. In total, he was not weaker than a high-level enemy. However, the difference in attributes between the Mountain Lord realm and the Demonic King realm was already tens of thousands of points. Then, how terrifying was the difference between the desolate Demonic realm and the Demonic King realm? 100,000? 1 million? Fighting above one's level? That was called courting death. Humph. The Resentment Society coldly snorted and stretched out its hand to stroke the transparent tentacles behind its head. It sneered, "Black Jiao, do you think you can escape death just because you've arranged for helpers? I've also arranged for people to be on the outside. Once someone crosses the boundary, they will immediately be entangled. Today, no one can save you, I've said it." Lin Yuan did not reply. He just kept moving his body that was like a pile of mud. Abundant demonic energy kept exploding in his body, and his damaged meridians and flesh were rapidly repaired. His condition was also recovering at a speed visible to the naked eye. Like a cat playing with a mouse, the Resentment Society coldly watched Lin Yuan continue to struggle, its speed still not fast nor slow. Chapter 728. Lin Yuan had become a turtle in a jar. The Resentment Society's eyes flashed with a look of contentment. This Black Jiao who had made a name for himself in the Sky Martial Continent, seemed to be nothing more than that. After thinking about it, the Resentment Society could not think of any loopholes in their plan. Ao Siphon had already made preparations. Once Yazi was unable to withstand the firepower, they would immediately send a reserve to hold back Ao Siphon. Thus, they were not in a hurry. As long as Lin Yuan was dead, everything would be fine. Thus, they decided to torture Lin Yuan to death, to let the entire Endless Sea and even the Sky Martial Continent know what would happen to those who were not willing to cooperate with the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. The Resentment Society could not see behind them, and did not expect that an even more terrifying existence than they had imagined was baring its ferocious fangs, and was closing in on Lin Yuan. A late-stage Mountain Lord Evil Dragon? One punch. An early-stage Demonic Beast King Evil Dragon? It was still one punch. The muscular Tao Tai was like a cold killing machine. The moment Lin Yuan's words landed, he suddenly charged out from a corner, not caring about his own side. He walked towards the area where Lin Yuan was, and smashed the demonic beasts in front of him into meat paste like he was swatting flies. At first, there were still some sea demons who were unconvinced and clamored to find trouble with Tao Tai. However, after killing 7 Demon King Realm sea demons in a row, Tao Tai didn't even have the intention to stop and take a breath. After such a calm attitude was revealed, most of the sea demons silently took a step back and chose to stay away from this godlike existence. Danger. As a demonic beast, it was instinctive to sense danger. The Resentment Society was thinking about how to torture and kill Lin Yuan as they approached Lin Yuan. Unexpectedly, at this moment, a chill suddenly drilled out from the bottom of their hearts, and their little old man's body directly trembled. They subconsciously turned their head, and saw a 3-meter-tall giant standing behind them, almost shrouding their current body in shadows. Hey Jiao, although you and my boss are colleagues, that's a different matter. The last time I saved you, it was because my boss gave me an order. This time, I'm saving you. It's my personal action. Do you understand what I mean? Tao Tai did not seem to be in a hurry to kill the Resentment Society. Instead, he looked at Lin Yuan, who was jumping on the ground like a salted fish, and then asked a question. Last time? Boss? Colleague? A look of doubt flashed through Lin Yuan's heterochromatic eyes. He didn't have the memory of the puppet's body. The word Tao Tai just now was completely subconscious, belonging to Lin Yuan's survival instinct. However, Lin Yuan searched his entire memory and still couldn't remember who this giant man was, let alone what he meant by boss and colleague. Good heavens, after waking up, I directly became a worker? Wait a minute, Lin Yuan's eyes changed slightly. It wasn't that he didn't have the memory of the puppet's body at all. After confirming that it was safe, the puppet's body would report the situation to Lin Yuan's consciousness every 3 days. When the two were completely disconnected, it was after the puppet's body was imprisoned in the underwater prison. After all, at that time, the puppet's body wasn't sure if it would be monitored. In order to ensure that the news of his body being carried in the beast pouch wouldn't leak out, Lin Yuan's body had never been released. He didn't have any memory of this Tao Tai, which meant that he knew him, which should have happened after he was imprisoned in the underwater prison. But that was where the strangeness came from. Tao Tai didn't have the blood of the dragon race. Lin Yuan didn't even know what it was. Under the observation of the Eye of God, Lin Yuan could clearly see that this guy was essentially an object composed of countless insects. It was just that these insects didn't seem to have their own consciousness, and all of them acted in unison according to the consciousness of Tao Tai. That was why there was such a giant man standing here. If Tao Tai wanted to at this moment, he could turn into countless insects and hide in the corners of the endless sea. Moreover, those evil dragons seemed to have no impression of Tao Tai at all, otherwise it would be impossible for them to ignore such a powerful existence. Therefore, this guy was not a member of the dragon race of the 4 seas, nor was it a sea monster with a grudge against the dragon palace of the 4 seas. It was hard to say whether it was a living thing in essence. It was more like the existence of Lin Yuan's previous puppet's body. Lin Yuan even felt that Tao Tai must be the scapegoat for the explosion of his consciousness that controlled the puppet's body. What do you want? Lin Yuan asked tentatively while healing his wounds. Although he wasn't sure what the other party was, since his survival instinct felt that he could be safe today after calling out Tao Tai, then he might as well believe in his choice and talk to Tao Tai about the conditions for his attack. Tao Tai said with a smile, "You are the same as my boss, an existence from the other side of the bitter sea. The creatures of this world don't know what the title, Tao Tai, means, but don't you know? The same as his boss." Both of them were existences from the other side of the bitter sea. Lin Yuan was silent for a moment, and then his eyes suddenly flashed. Tao Tai's boss was also one of the hosts selected by the system, and he should also belong to the quite powerful category. Even if the current Lin Yuan were to go all out, regardless of attribute points, materials, and the like, he could at most rely on the system to copy some fierce generals like Xiang Yu and Lu Bu. He was barely standing at the limit of human beings, but that was all. Lin Yuan still couldn't create an existence like Tao Tai. The body of a puppet should be aware of this. Therefore, in his subconscious mind, he felt that once Tao Tai appeared, he would be safe. This was a mixed double fight from the two system hosts. It was definitely not something that a mere demon king could withstand. Although I know that you are not a real Tao Tai, your character and appearance are indeed very similar to the characteristics of Tao Tai in the records I have read. It seems that your boss is far stronger than I thought. Lin Yuan's eyes flashed and he said in a deep voice, I know you can eat, but eating meat and eating soil are two different concepts. If you help me, I can tell you the location of a demonized black tortoise. The biggest characteristic of Tao Tai was its gluttony. In mythological records, it was a beast that symbolized greed. It was said that because it did not eat enough, it ate its own body, leaving only its big mouth and head. This guy was an imitation of Tao Tai. It also did not have its own body, and its character was quite similar. To be able to create such an existence, it was feared that the boss, that Lin Yuan had never met before, was already among the top of the system hosts. Chapter 729. In Lin Yuan's previous life, some picky diners were also called gluttons. Such an existence might refuse many temptations, but they would never refuse a delicious meal. For Tao Tai, it should be the same. Although the number of demon beasts in the endless sea was not small, and their bloodlines were not weak, almost all of them having the blood of the dragon race flowing in their veins, these demon beasts with the blood of the dragon race and the demon beasts of the dragon race were still essentially two different species. For an existence like Tao Tai, the real temptation was the ancestral dragons of the Four Seas dragon clan, because they were real dragons. No matter how pure the bloodline of the other dragon blood demon beasts was, they could not arouse Tao Tai's interest. But Black Tortoise was different. Even if it was not the black tortoise in the myths and legends, it had the blood of a holy beast, which was far more attractive to Tao Tai than these ordinary demon beasts of the endless sea. Although the last time they met, the demonized black tortoise mistakenly thought that Lin Yuan was a descendant of the demon court, so it took some care of Lin Yuan. But it was undeniable that in the war against Hong Jun, the black tortoise had begun to distort and could no longer return to its original appearance. Over the years, if it had not been for the suppression of the Sarira of the senior monk, it was feared that it would have long lost itself and become a great demon that wreaked havoc on the northern frontier. Lin Yuan did not want to bury such a ticking time bomb in the northern frontier. It must be dealt with as soon as possible. A ruler should have the appearance of a ruler. Putting aside personal grievances, Lin Yuan needed to be responsible for the people of the northern frontier. Tao Tai rolled his eyes and nodded with a smile, saying, I am satisfied with this reward. However, at this moment, it seemed that resentment, which had been ignored by the two of them, suddenly raised its head. Its face was full of undisguised viciousness. The transparent tentacles behind its head suddenly danced and pierced directly into Tao Tai's chest. Black Jiao, I have to admit that the helper you found is very strong. After the tentacle succeeded, the Society of Resentment's face became even more ruthless. But you shouldn't have ignored me. My tentacle contains a very strong neurotoxin. Even Lord Dragon King would be paralyzed for a while if he touched it. Your helper has at most 3 breaths of time to live. As soon as he said that, the Resentment Society's expression turned sinister. He strode forward and continued, Black Jiao, I originally wanted to give you a quick death, but I've changed my mind now. I'll make you die a horrible death. The Resentment Society was originally hesitating between killing Lin Yuan and quickly getting rid of him. They slowed down before to think about how to deal with him, but after the appearance of Tao Tai, they lost face in an instant. At this moment, they were furious, and the Resentment Society no longer had any scruples. There were transparent tentacles behind its head. Lin Yuan hadn't guessed that the Resentment Society had the bloodline of a monster beast. Now the answer had been revealed. In addition to the bloodline of the dragon race, this guy also had the characteristics of a jellyfish. No wonder this guy could clearly transform himself into a human form and then start a new life on the Tianwu continent like Ning Tianxing, but he didn't do so. Instead, he kept the tentacles behind his head. Then these tentacles were likely to be one of his trump cards. Jellyfish looked very beautiful, but they were poisonous. Their transparent tentacles stored neurotoxins to fight against hunters or paralyze their prey. Some of the more poisonous jellyfish could easily poison a human to death with just a touch. Since Lin Yuan's rebirth, he didn't know much about the sea monster beasts, but just like in his previous life, the monster beasts that could dominate or roar in the endless sea almost all had the bloodline of whales, sharks, and the like. Just like in the Tianwu continent, wolves, tigers, and leopards were better than cows, sheep, and horses. This was the gap between species. No matter which world it was in, it was the same. However, this was the first time Lin Yuan had seen a jellyfish-type monster beast. He didn't need to think too much to know that the toxicity of the resentment society couldn't be weak. After all, it was an existence in the Monster King realm. Squeezing out a little bit of the neurotoxins from its body could probably instantly kill a monster beast in the desolate monster realm. Unfortunately, this time was different. It was true that the resentment society had succeeded, but it was also a fact that they had found the wrong opponent. What was Tao Tai? Lin Yuan didn't know. But he saw, clearly, that Tao Tai's body was made up of countless tiny insects. It wasn't even a whole body. The so-called organs and nerves, it didn't have anything. Things like toxins naturally had no effect on it. Some of the insects were infected by the neurotoxins, so it directly abandoned those poisoned insects and completed the detoxification. Lin Yuan saw it very clearly. The moment the transparent tentacles pierced into Tao Tai's body, the insects on the surface of Tao Tai's body began to slowly sink into its body, and its chest instantly collapsed into a hole. A moment later, the insects near the hole began to split themselves. In the blink of an eye, the original one insect became 7 or 8. Due to the small size of these insects and their fast-splitting speed, coupled with the fact that Lin Yuan was the only witness, the rest of the monster beasts didn't realize that this unreasonably strong existence was completely different from them. With this kind of body made up of insects that could split themselves to repair injuries, Tao Tai could be said to have a true immortal body. No matter how powerful the healing techniques in the world were, no matter how strong the physique, no matter how tyrannical the bloodline, they were not as powerful as the insects on Tao Tai's body. Even before the battle, Tao Tai only needed to leave one insect somewhere and it could easily achieve the legendary rebirth from a drop of blood. Pa! Tao Tai suddenly stretched out his hand and pressed down on the resentment society who was just about to take a step forward. His low voice was like that of an evil spirit crawling out of hell. I hate it when people interrupt me, but you taste pretty good. It's limp and numb. It seems that the neurotoxin in your body is a good seasoning. It wasn't just Lin Yuan who was dumbfounded. Almost all the sea monsters who were watching from the sidelines opened their mouths wide. That was a neurotoxin that could instantly kill a desolate demon realm expert. Even an existence at the level of the Four Seas Dragon King would be paralyzed and unable to move for a long time. What did this guy say? Limp and numb, a good seasoning? Could it be that this guy was more fierce than the Dragon King? Tao Tai suddenly stretched out his hand and grabbed the tentacles behind the Resentment Society's head. With a strong pull, a large amount of juice splashed in all directions. More than 10 transparent tentacles had neatly appeared in Tao Tai's right hand. The Resentment Society was kicked away by his foot. At this moment, it was constantly rolling and twitching on the ground. His face was twisted and ferocious. It was unknown whether it was because of hatred or because of pain. Chapter 730. Several transparent tentacles jumped in Tao Tai's palm as if they had become living creatures. How is this possible? How can you be okay? Chiu Wudi, who was confronting the warden and the fish-head man, stared at Tao Tai in a daze, and the expression on his face suddenly became strange. As one of the 8 distresses and a spy arranged by the Dragon Palace, it was very clear about its colleagues' means. No matter who it was that was poisoned by the neurotoxin, the paralysis was considered good. Even if it was poisoned, it had to be supplemented with various phases to recuperate for at least half a year before it could walk. What was the origin of Black Jiao's helper? Tao Tai turned his head and glanced at Xiao Wudi, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. He said in a cold voice, "There is nothing on your body that can arouse my appetite. Trash like you is not worthy of living in this world." Listening to Tao Tai's words, Lin Yuan's eyelids twitched slightly. He suddenly remembered a saying in his previous life that he scolded his good-for-nothing children: "It's better for me to give birth to a piece of barbecued pork than to give birth to you." Tao Tai's words were somewhat similar. So, in your eyes, other people don't even have the qualifications to be food, so they simply don't deserve to live in this world? Almost there. Lin Yuan lowered his head silently, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. It was still the same sentence he said before. Whether it was a human or a monster beast, as long as their cultivation reached a certain level, no one was a fool. Those who treated others as fools were fools. It was just that most of them were used to solving problems by force, so they didn't like to use their brains. But just because they didn't like to use their brains, it didn't mean that they didn't know how to use their brains. Lin Yuan made such a big move here today in order to attract the attention of the entire Endless Sea, and at the same time forced the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas to have no way out. They could only stay in the Endless Sea and fight to the death with the old rulers. As for the monster beasts of other races, they would not listen to Lin Yuan's one-sided words. They would definitely send their confidants to the front line arranged by the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas to investigate the situation. Once the news was confirmed, there would be no way out. Why did the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas run away? Because they couldn't beat the old rulers. Or rather, even if they could win, the losses would be too heavy, so they were unwilling to fight. The Dragon Palaces of the Four Seas were all like this. If it were the demonic beasts from the Outer Sea or the Sea Monster Guild, they wouldn't have a good time fighting the old dominators one-on-one, let alone the sea dominators who were struggling to survive. If they wanted to win, they had to team up to fight this battle. If one party didn't participate, it meant that their loss would be bigger. Thus, they had cut off everyone's retreat. No one should think about running away. Whoever ran away would be the enemy of the Endless Sea. Then why did the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas hide the matter of the aberrants? Although the Martial Heaven continent was vast and boundless, after so many years of development, whether it was humans, demonic beasts, demi-humans, or other races, they had already occupied most of the land. The population was close to saturation. Even if there was no blood feud between the various powers, they would still attack and kill each other. Through this method, they would reduce the pressure on the population saturation. If the native creatures of the Sky Martial continent were like this, how could there be a place that accepted the demonic beasts from the Endless Sea? If the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas migrated, the Sky Martial continent might not even be able to eat it, let alone the entire Endless Sea. Thus, if they left too much, the Sky Martial continent wouldn't be able to eat it. At that time, not only the native creatures of the Sky Martial continent, even the demonic beasts of the Endless Sea would have to kill each other for survival. With the aberrants coveting behind them, everyone would die if they fought. However, no one would choose to wait for death. This was also the reason why Lin Yuan had directly expressed his stance. Now, where else could accept the migration of the Endless Sea? Only the Shenwu dynasty, which was under the chaos of the Sky Demon. However, the territory of the Shenwu dynasty bordered the northern frontier. In the entire Sky Martial continent, other than the Guardian of the Heavenly Gate, there really wasn't any force that dared to snatch food from the northern frontier. In fact, even the Guardian of the Heavenly Gate had been smashed shut by Lin Yuan's various spiritual objects. Even if they still had some little tricks, they had to be wary of the ancient demon court behind Lin Yuan. If the war in the Endless Sea didn't go well, the only choice for these sea demon clans was to befriend Lin Yuan. Whether it was the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas or the Sea Demon Guild, after leaving the Endless Sea, they were just slightly stronger demonic beasts. They were far from having the ability to challenge the Guardian of the Heavenly Gate. Otherwise, there wouldn't be so few demonic beasts guarding the Heavenly Gate, and those land demonic beasts wouldn't be kept in captivity in the Hengduan mountain range. It was impossible to fight. Therefore, in the end, who could go ashore to ensure the survival of the clan, still depended on whether Lin Yuan nodded or not. Speculators, Lin Yuan softly muttered, and the light in his eyes flickered again. There was no shortage of speculators in any world. Although he had offended the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas, there would be countless sea demon clans who were unwilling to bet their lives on this war. They would do everything they could to please Lin Yuan. Whether it was a blessing or a curse, it was hard to say. It was just that the means of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas were indeed somewhat beyond Lin Yuan's expectations. The plan to use the evil dragon camp had been repeatedly deduced 4 times before. Under the premise that the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas didn't take action, they could definitely firmly suppress the claws and teeth of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas, giving the other demonic beast clans in the Endless Sea time to understand the truth. When the matter of the old ruler spread throughout the Endless Sea, Lin Yuan would naturally become important. Unfortunately, although Lin Yuan had embarked on the path of God, he was not an omniscient and omnipotent existence after all. Although 5 members of the 9 sons of the Dragon Palace had died, he didn't expect that the 2 8-bitter evil dragons guarding the evil dragon camp were also chess pieces planted by the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas in the evil dragon camp. If it weren't for Tao Tai, he would have lost his life here today. Your Excellency doesn't have the blood of my dragon race, but you can come and go freely in the deep sea. Your cultivation must be very high. Qiu Buji cupped his fists at Tao Tai and said in a deep voice, although I don't know what kind of friendship you have with this Black Jiao. But if I didn't hear wrong, you were asking for benefits from the Black Jiao before, right? If it's just a deal, why don't your Excellency make a deal with the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas? Make a deal with you? Tao Tai raised the corner of his eyes slightly, and a trace of coldness flashed in his eyes. He smiled and said, what the Black Jiao can give, you can't give. Now I'm in a good mood. If you kneel down and accept your death, I can give you a quick death. A guy who makes people lose their appetite shouldn't be alive. As soon as his voice fell, Tao Tai stuffed all the transparent tentacles in his hand into his mouth and chewed them with crunching sounds. Transparent juice overflowed from the corner of Tao Tai's mouth, and was soon licked clean by a scarlet long tongue. Chapter 731. It wasn't until all the transparent tentacles had been chewed and swallowed that Tao Tai's face showed a look of satisfaction. It was as if what he had just eaten was not a carrier of neurotoxins, but some kind of delicacy. Many sea monsters who were watching the battle quietly swallowed a mouthful of saliva. However, in just a moment, most of these sea monsters directly raised their hands and slapped themselves in the face, pulling out the bold thoughts in their minds. That thing can't be eaten. You'll really die if you eat it. Your Excellency, what do you mean by this? Qiu Wuji seemed to completely ignore Tao Tai's ridicule and said in a deep voice, my Dragon Palace of the Four Seas covers the entire Endless Sea. All the races in this sea are the slaves of my Dragon Palace. If your Excellency has anything you want, just say it. My Dragon Clan of the Four Seas will do our best to satisfy your Excellency's request. Although the sea monsters around were dissatisfied, no one dared to act out in public. Today's Dragon Palace of the Four Seas was indeed on the verge of collapse, but that was built on the condition that the aberrations were causing trouble. Now that the fig leaf had been removed by Lin Yuan, who dared to provoke the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas again? They would hit you back, and you couldn't show the slightest bit of temper. Otherwise, they would directly drag you to the front line of the battlefield and directly cut off your clan's inheritance. If the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas was serious, looking at the entire Endless Sea, only the evil dragon camp could stand up to them. The other 2 major forces were the Outer Sea Monsters Guild and the Sea Monster Guild. Although their strength was not below the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas, after all, their organizational structure was too loose. Without a certain amount of time to integrate their forces, they might be scattered by the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas in a face-to-face confrontation. After a while, the 2 sides would fall into a long tug of war and be unable to extricate themselves. Therefore, the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas spoke arrogantly, and the sea monsters could only grit their teeth and endure. This is the endless sea. The dragon clan of the four seas has informed the sea areas for thousands of years. It's said that all the races in the sea are the slaves of the dragon palace. This is not wrong. A dull voice suddenly sounded, and immediately, a big lizard covered with brown scales appeared in Lin Yuan's line of sight, maintaining a human posture. With just one glance, Lin Yuan's pupils contracted violently. Divinity. He actually felt divinity from this giant lizard. The cultivators of this world believed that the so-called ancient gods were just some more powerful life forms, which meant that they were the oldest cultivators. Because they could control lightning, move mountains and fill seas, and even turn their breath into ice, most cultivators could do such things. The world in Lin Yuan's previous life had a history of 5,000 years. In the previous eras, there were countless records of civilization. Even some of the secrets of the untainted world could be found in the records. Rather than saying that this world was a small world split from the untainted world, it was better to say that it had been transformed by some mighty force into an imitation of the untainted world. Except that it was not as vast as the untainted world, and some secret realms were nowhere to be found. It was almost the original appearance of the untainted world. Because of the high level of civilization, although Lin Yuan had not been in contact with the cultivation world in his previous life, he knew that the cultivation world in his previous life was definitely not comparable to the half-baked cultivation world in the Tianmen continent. At the very least, the people in his previous life were very clear that gods and immortals were different. The so-called immortals were the real top cultivators. They used to be ordinary people. Perhaps they had no name or surname, or perhaps they had left a deep mark in the history books. But without exception, they were all powerful cultivators. They called themselves immortals, and so on, but they would not call themselves immortals, let alone gods. Gods were purely creatures of faith. For example, if enough people believed that a stone was a god, then the stone was really a god. This was the path to becoming a god by absorbing the power of faith. In the ancient tribes in his previous life, they would always believe in some strange beasts as totems to protect the tribesmen. This was the path to becoming an ancient god. Lin Yuan was also working hard to advance on this path. Because although the totems that the ancient tribes believed in were symbols, they were indeed strange beasts that had once existed. They were essentially no different from demonic beasts. They could use the power of faith to improve themselves, and they could also use demonic power to improve themselves. The lack of either would not affect their survival. At first, the system hoped to turn Lin Yuan into a god. Because then, the system could cut off Lin Yuan's channel to obtain the power of faith at any time. After losing the power of faith, the so-called god would quickly perish. It could be said that the system directly controlled Lin Yuan's life and death. But Lin Yuan was not in a hurry to make a choice, so there was an opportunity to talk to the system on an equal footing and cooperate with each other today. Who are you? Lin Yuan's eyes flashed with vigilance. When this path to becoming a god reached a certain stage, divinity would condense in the god's body. This kind of divinity could be recognized as the residue after the power of faith was consumed. It could also be understood as a blessing bestowed by the god to his followers. It was just like how the Western gods transformed humans into angels because they stripped the divinity from themselves and gave it to mortals. That was how angels were born. The big lizard in front of him was not a divine creature like an angel. It was essentially an ancient god. Lin Yuan could feel that there were some thin threads connected to its body that represented the power of faith. This meant that this big lizard still had believers in the human world. Although those thin threads that represented the power of faith were no longer bright, it was undeniable that this big lizard was once an extremely powerful ancient god. Because according to the exact number given by the system, Lin Yuan would have to consume at least 500,000 points of the power of faith to obtain 1 point of divinity. The divinity hidden in this big lizard's body was at least over 100. This ancient god must have been extremely prominent in the past. Even though the power of faith had declined, there were still believers quietly worshipping it. It was likely that it was an almighty being that surpassed the times. Just an old man on his deathbed. This old man has been sleeping here for more than 3,000 years. If it weren't for my young friend, I might have to sleep for another 2,000 years. Although I wasn't waiting for you, this old man is deeply gratified to be able to see my young friend's passage. The big lizard's mouth opened slightly, as if it was trying hard to squeeze out a smile. However, on the lizard's scarred face, the smile was hideous no matter how one looked at it. Sleeping for more than 3,000 years? Sleeping for another 2,000 years? Lin Yuan was not the only one. Almost all the sea demons present held their breaths and looked at the big lizard that suddenly appeared with disbelief. Some people's eyes flickered, some people had doubts on their faces, and some even vaguely revealed a bit of killing intent. It seemed that they were targeting this ancient god of unknown origin. Chapter 732. 5,000 years was enough for a demonic beast king to die of old age twice. But this giant lizard's casual words immediately aroused the vigilance of countless people. This fellow. Could it be that its strength was above the demonic beast king realm? What was its purpose in coming here? If it was for the Black Jiao, was it a friend or a foe? Most of the demonic beasts thought that the giant lizard was bragging, but a small portion did not think so. They also thought that the giant lizard only had a lifespan of 5,000 years. But Lin Yuan was definitely not one of them. Putting aside the fact that this giant lizard was an ancient god, even if it wasn't, having a lifespan of 5,000 years was enough to prove that it was an extremely powerful monster. It could even be in existence on par with the ancestral dragons of the Four Seas dragon bloodline. However, the score couldn't be settled like that. Sleeping was the natural instinct of all living creatures, but who had ever heard of sleeping for an entire lifetime? 5,000 years was a very long time for the demonic beasts of the Tianwu continent. It was long enough to destroy any powerful existence. But Lin Yuan's experience was far beyond that of the natives of the Tianwu continent. He was very clear that there was a group of heaven-defying existences in the world. For example, the demonic gods that existed before Pan Gu created the world. They could sleep for tens of thousands of years. No matter how the world changed, to them, it was just a dream. When one reached a certain level of strength, the so-called lifespan and time were just laughable restrictions. Who had ever seen a violent bear being tied up by a piece of paper? 5,000 years was an unimaginably long time for these demonic beasts, but to an ancient god, it was just a blink of an eye. With the help of the system, Lin Yuan had a better understanding of this world's high-end cultivation system. Above the desolate demonic realm was the demonic beast king realm in the endless sea. The outstanding ones in the demonic beast king realm would be given a title based on their characteristics and personality, representing the recognition of their strength by the demonic beasts of the endless sea. It was common knowledge that an early demonic beast king could not defeat a mid-demonic beast king, but a mid-demonic beast king of the same realm could not defeat a mid-demonic beast king with a title. Long Jiuzi was a demonic beast king with a title, but these titles were just the pride of the Four Seas dragon clan. They were not recognized by the entire endless sea. The realm above the demonic beast king realm, the realm of the ancestral dragons, was usually called the ancestral demonic beast realm, while the corresponding realm for humans was called supremacy. One was the primogenitor of the Yao clan, and the other was the supreme of the mortal realm. Just by their names, he knew the cultivation content of this realm. At this level, regardless of whether it was a human or a monster, they had to create their own clan or force. Moreover, they had to make all of their descendants or servants believe in them and think that they were the gods of the world. Only then would they be able to obtain enough incense to break through to the next level, which was the true energy-shaping realm. Ning Tianxing's transformation seemed perfect, but it was just a method of possession. He hid his demonic soul in a human's body, and it could be suppressed for a few decades. However, as his cultivation level increased day by day, the human's weak body was destined to be unable to contain the powerful demonic soul. At this time, he could only choose a suitable body to possess, or die. In addition to Lin Yuan's transformation, Lin Yuan had seen many human-like creatures in the endless sea. Most of them came from the dragon palace of the Four Seas. Because they wanted to set foot on the land to reproduce, they wanted to have a human-like body. Firstly, it was convenient for them to walk on land, and secondly, it was to ensure that their clan would not be rejected by humans. However, this transformation was even more unsightly. The dragon clan of the four seas had been forcibly transformed into a demi-human. It seemed to be convenient for them to move on land, but in fact, it was still not liked by humans. Even demonic beasts looked down on such demi-humans. This step was extremely difficult and dangerous. Once the power of incense was not enough, after 5,000 years, no matter how handsome you were in the past, you would have to obediently turn into a skeleton. Lin Yuan was still in the Mountain Lord realm, but he had already created his own clan, cultivated his own forces, and even officially established a divine clan in the northern region. However, he would rather suppress a large number of attribute points to cultivate his clan and subordinates than to quickly improve his own cultivation. This was the reason why he was unwilling to quickly improve his own cultivation. With enough power of incense, he could transform. It sounded extremely simple, but in fact, it was very simple in the Eldritch world. It seemed that he could cultivate to this step by casually cultivating in seclusion for tens of thousands of years. However, after leaving the Eldritch world, living creatures did not have such a long lifespan. Therefore, in countless years, there were probably many who had reached the ancestor demon realm or the supreme realm, but there were very few who had taken the last step. Why was the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas called the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas? At first, Lin Yuan thought that this was a force related to the legends of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas in his previous life. But in fact, this was not the case. The Dragon Palace of the Four Seas was indeed the four dragon clans, and each had the bloodline of the ancestor dragon. Even if the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas was connected to each other, the ancestor dragons would not be so harmonious among themselves. They would probably compete with each other for believers. Lin Yuan was indeed in the Mountain Lord realm, and soon, his realm would be directly raised to the desolate demon realm by the system. It seemed like he was wasting his time, but in fact, he was sharpening his axe before chopping wood. Before entering the ancestor demon realm, he had set up believers and god kingdoms to ensure that he could take advantage of the fact that he was still in the safe zone, to not have to think about how to fight for survival with Hongjuan's lackeys. He could focus on developing his own strength, so that he would not be powerless when the time came and waste his time. In the end, he could not cross the threshold and die of old age somewhere. What you are waiting for is, Lin Yuan's eyes flashed, and he took the initiative to ask. The giant lizard frowned and said with some dissatisfaction, "Young friend, although this old man has been in a coma for a long time, he definitely did not live in vain. The more submissive you pretend to be, the more I know that you have the intention to kill." At this point, the giant lizard suddenly said with a deep meaning, "Incredible, incredible." The three realms were originally supposed to be in charge of one side, and the Nether King and the Celestial Emperor might not have interacted in their lives. He would pass on his good deeds, and you would imprison your evil deeds. But what you said just now vaguely changed the destiny. It seems that young friend's foundation is more powerful than I thought. Lin Yuan's expression changed. With the existence of the underworld's black water, he would become the god of the underworld of the Tianwu continent sooner or later. Even if there were gods who were given the authority of the underworld by him in the future, they would only be his lackeys, and it would not be wrong to call them the Nether King. But in this world, other than the Nether King, there was the Celestial Emperor. This world wanted to use his influence to perfect itself. And his simple question just now changed the fate of the Nether King and the Celestial Emperor. Two lines that should not have intersected were about to collide. Chapter 733. Roots? What did having a powerful root have to do with changing fate? Lin Yuan was silent for a moment. He suddenly remembered that his roots were actually the system. After the ancient lizard god revealed that there was another existence in this world who walked on the path of God, his fate with the Sky Emperor had changed. "You want me to kill the Sky Emperor?" Lin Yuan's expression did not change as he began to communicate with the system in his mind. The sea of bitterness is boundless. After the primordial world was shattered, countless small and medium worlds were born. The three realms stabilized and became a great world. At this point, it is already independent of the primordial world and has formed its own system. Although the Tianwu continent is not as strong as the primordial world, after countless years of development, it already has its own technology tree, cultivation system, and other world origins. It can be considered a mature climate. Otherwise, the natives of this world would not have been able to resist Hongjuan's subordinates outside the gate of heaven. If the Tianwu continent wants to take another step forward, either the heavenly realm or the netherworld will have to appear, causing all things to have the cycle of karma. At this time, it is considered a middle world. The will of this world will be strengthened, and the natives of this world will become stronger. Outsiders like you and Hongjuan's subordinates will be suppressed or even killed. If the Tianwu world's ambition stops here, I can't be bothered to care about it. After all, you will become the lord of the netherworld in this world. You will be bound to the world's consciousness and share both glory and disgrace. It will naturally not think of killing you. However, the information that the ancient god in front of you unintentionally revealed is very fatal. If this world gathers the power of the three realms, it will immediately evolve into a great world. Apart from the area that needs to be slowly expanded, it will essentially be no different from the world of your previous life or the primordial world. From then on, this world will give birth to its own heavenly Tao, and the pressure it exerts on outsiders will be even stronger. Even I will have to give up on this world. As for you, as the lord of the three realms, you will become one of the native gods of this world. You will not be able to leave with me. It can be considered as the system unbinding you. I'm not telling you this to force you to kill the Sky Emperor, because you are now one of my greatest hopes of contending against Hongjun. Therefore, you have the right to speak to me as an equal. Although I changed your fate with the Sky Emperor, how the two of you interact with each other is completely up to you. It may not be a bad thing to refuse my help and become a native god of this world, but it may not be a bad thing to work with me to overthrow Hongjuan's brutal rule. Even if you leave me, Hongjuan's minions will continue to encroach on this world. You can't escape the fate of fighting him. Think about it yourself. The system didn't pretend to be profound. When Lin Yuan asked, it openly admitted to what it was saying and took the initiative to explain it to Lin Yuan. Kill. Lin Yuan also didn't hesitate and made a decision in an instant. Becoming one of the rulers of the three realms in the greater thousand world was simply a fool's dream in his previous life. However, when this opportunity was really placed in front of him, Lin Yuan could only sneer. He had been in this world for almost 3 years, and he had almost forgotten that he was still a human. His temperament had been honed to the point that it was close to nothing. As long as he could obtain benefits, he would kill humans, monsters, and even his close subordinates without batting an eyelid. However, the only thing he hadn't forgotten was the deep-seated blood feud that he bore. For 3 whole years, whenever Lin Yuan closed his eyes, he could recall scenes of hell. The faces of his enemies seemed to linger in front of him, wantonly laughing at Lin Yuan all the time. In Lin Yuan's previous life, this was just pure hatred, a hatred that would only end when both sides died. However, after being reborn, he stood in the clouds as a monster and had the power to consign his enemies to eternal damnation. However, he was afraid of the heavenly gate, afraid of the sea of bitterness, and afraid of the ruler of the primordial world. He didn't dare to take that step. Hatred was no longer hatred, but had become a heart demon. The thought of cultivating hard and defeating Hongjun as soon as possible so that he could return to his previous life to take revenge constantly tormented Lin Yuan. He could only approach his goal step by step to alleviate the symptoms of this heart demon. If the 3 realms converged, he might not be able to leave this world for the rest of his life. At that moment, negative thoughts would flood over like a tide. Even if he could restrain them for a while, he would go crazy sooner or later. The Sky Emperor who would only set foot in the endless sea 2,000 years later had already become a person that Lin Yuan had to kill. You're right. This junior's insignificant cultivation shouldn't have shown off in front of you. Lin Yuan nodded at the lizard ancient god and chuckled. It's true that I want to kill you. Why bother? The lizard ancient god looked up and down at Lin Yuan and bitterly smiled. Since you're the one who took the order, you should know what the appearance of the Sky Emperor means to this world. This old man is about to die, so what happens in the future has nothing to do with me. However, there are only benefits and no disadvantages for you. Isn't that right? This junior has his own concerns. Senior, please lift your hand. Lin Yuan calmly took 2 steps back, while the Tao Tai stared at the lizard ancient god with shining eyes. Although it didn't know what kind of existence the lizard ancient god was, its instincts told it that once it ate this lizard, the benefits would be incomparably huge. In the future, even if the boss personally came, it would be able to wrestle with the boss. It wouldn't be like now, obediently acting as Lin Yuan's bodyguard because of a few threats from the boss. The lizard ancient god shook its head and bitterly smiled. What happens in the future has nothing to do with this old man, but this matter is very important. If this old man's matter is ruined because of a single mistake, I'm afraid this old man won't be able to rest in peace even if I die. At this point, there was no need to continue the discussion. For an existence like the lizard ancient god, whether it was the Sky Emperor or the Underworld King, they had nothing to do with it. However, if it revealed the secrets of heaven, the Underworld King and the Sky Emperor, who were supposed to be 2 parallel lines, would fight to the death, then the lizard ancient god would not be able to rest in peace even if it died. Senior's physical body is about to fall, and your clan won't be as powerful as it was in the past. If you fight with me, you'll be the one to die in the end. Why bother? Lin Yuan gently shook his head and once again put some distance between him and the lizard ancient god. Even if it was an ancient god that was about to fall, it wasn't someone he could provoke. Even his strongest Tao Tai might not be a match for the lizard ancient god. If both sides fought without restraint, no matter how fast the insect split, it wouldn't be as fast as the cleansing of divine power. Chapter 734. Unless you change your mind, this old man will fight to the death. The ancient god of lizards shook his head. His eyes flashed, and his body began to grow. Although the ancient god of lizards looked like a giant lizard, it was no more than an ordinary creature. It was about 2 to 3 meters tall. However, when it unleashed its power, the ancient god of lizards instantly revealed its true body in front of Lin Yuan. A terrifying divine power descended, causing all the demonic beasts in the sea region to tremble. This is an ancient god? A look of surprise flashed across Lin Yuan's eyes. Although he wasn't afraid, he couldn't suppress his body's instincts. Under the ancient god of lizards' pressure, he actually couldn't stop trembling. It wasn't bloodline pressure, nor was it the suppression of cultivation level. It was pure divine power. When a powerful ancient god faced off against a new god, the pressure created by the clash wasn't earth-shattering, but it was still terrifying to the extreme. Among the sea demons present, there were many low-level sea demons who wanted to see if they could take advantage of the situation. However, at this moment, all the sea demons below the 5th level of the River Lord realm were crushed to death by the overwhelming pressure. Even though there were many powerful beings around them, they couldn't protect their juniors. They could only watch as their juniors were crushed to death by the divine might. What was more terrifying was that the divine power was still increasing. Ha 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 ha. Qiu Wuji laughed wantonly and mocked, "Black Jiao, oh Black Jiao, you think you're so smart, but you offended such a terrifying senior with just a few words. It seems that killing you doesn't need to dirty the hands of the Dragon Palace of the 4 Seas." Although the divine power was still increasing, Qiu Wuji didn't show any fear on his face. It was a sea monster in the middle stage of the Demon King realm, and one of the best among them. If it was squashed to death by the inexplicable pressure, there would be no one left in the sea apart from the despair-inducing giant lizard whose origins were unknown. Divine power. Who doesn't have it? Lin Yuan shouted and gritted his teeth. A huge shadow of a black dragon appeared behind Lin Yuan, exuding a powerful divine aura. Moreover, it was also 10,000 feet tall. The terrifying divine aura poured out and was almost on par with the ancient lizard god in an instant. But who was stronger and who was weaker could be seen at a glance. The lizard ancient god was strengthening itself, so just by standing there, it was a true god that could suppress all of eternity. However, Lin Yuan did not use his true body to fight. Instead, he released his own divine soul. In other words, the phantom behind him was an amalgamation of his divine sense. Just this brief moment of divinity had drained all of the Joss flames that Lin Yuan had accumulated. Fighting to this point was already Lin Yuan's limit. But for the lizard ancient god, this was far from its limit. It could barely be considered a warm-up. If it was willing to go on a killing spree, its divine aura alone could wipe out all of the creatures in this sea region. The strength of an ancient god was far beyond the imagination of mortals. Even if it was an ancient god that was about to fall, the foundation that it had accumulated over many years was enough to make any enemy feel despair. The lizard ancient god softly exclaimed and looked at Lin Yuan with a puzzled expression. It seemed that it could not understand Lin Yuan's path. It could detect a familiar aura from Lin Yuan's body, which was the path of the ancient totem god. It was the path of the ancient totem god, which protected human beings and then traded with human beings, using various benefits in exchange for the power of incense. All the power of incense would be absorbed by the ancient totem god to strengthen itself. However, the strength of an ancient god came from strengthening themselves. Although they walked the path of a god, they stepped into the extraordinary realm step by step. In essence, they were no different from cultivators. The only difference was that cultivators absorbed spiritual energy, while totem ancient gods absorbed joss flames. But Lin Yuan's divinity display did not belong to the path of a totem ancient god. The lizard ancient god could sense that Lin Yuan's physical body was already incomparably weak. He only had the cultivation of a trifling late-stage river lord. He was an existence that the lizard ancient god could casually crush to death. But to be able to manifest his own divine soul, that was the technique of a god of faith. This old man cannot help but sigh with emotion. Every generation produces a new genius. As expected of the future underworld king. His methods are far from what a dying god like me can imagine. The lizard ancient god shook its head, a trace of regret on its face. For a god of faith, once their divine soul was destroyed, even if they did not die, their vitality would be greatly damaged. However, Lin Yuan walked the path of a totem ancient god. His origin was still within himself. Even if his divine soul was destroyed, he could easily use the power of joss flames to condense an even more powerful existence in the future. Lin Yuan might not be able to last as long as the lizard ancient god if he only relied on his divine power to resist. But if he decided to go all out, his divine soul would self-destruct, and he would be able to severely injure this dying god. In fact, he might even be able to push it infinitely closer to death. If Lin Yuan had enough joss flames, perhaps he would be able to kill an ancient god that was far more powerful than himself. However, this did not mean that the lizard ancient god did not have a way to kill Lin Yuan. With the strength of Lin Yuan's divine soul, he would need to self-destruct at least 3 to 5 times to kill it. During this time, the lizard ancient god could continuously increase the strength of its divine might. A trifling late-stage river lord's body would definitely not be able to withstand its divine might. Old senior, although this junior wants to kill the celestial arch, I have no intention of becoming your enemy. Why must you do this? Lin Yuan shook his head with a bitter smile and forced himself to speak. His joss flames had been used up almost overnight. If he could not scare off the lizard ancient god, only death awaited him. It was true that an old man who did not die was a demon. It was just a momentary lapse of concentration, coupled with the system's secret modification of fate and karma, that ancient god instantly sensed his intention to kill the celestial emperor. If not for that, how could he have fallen to such a state? If the Nether King uses his divine aura to swear that he will never become an enemy of the celestial arch, this old man will stop here. Furthermore, I am willing to pay with my life as punishment for offending the Nether King. The lizard ancient god shook its head, its gaze incomparably cold. It refused to budge an inch on this matter. An oath could not be made carelessly, especially when the world's consciousness had awakened. It would not be an exaggeration to say that there were gods everywhere. Once one broke an oath, they would definitely be cursed. If Lin Yuan swore on his divine position that he still wanted to kill the celestial arch in the future, his divine position would be stripped away in an instant. At that time, even if Lin Yuan had believers all over the Tianwu world, it would be impossible for him to become a god again. Old thief, you think you can bully a junior of the dragon race just because you are older? Let this god exchange blows with you. A furious roar rang out, but no one could tell where it came from. It was as if the roar was right next to their ears, but also as if it was far away on the horizon. Chapter 735. Who's that voice? No. Impossible. Chio Buji's expression changed dramatically, and his face was filled with disbelief. Chio Buji obviously knew who that voice belonged to. Although Lin Yuan did not know, he knew that the other party should be an ancient god. Perhaps he had not lived as long as the ancient god lizard, but he was at his peak and was definitely more powerful than the ancient god lizard. Although the ancient god lizard had not shown his divinity, when the voice sounded, Lin Yuan already felt that the vast divine power from the ancient god lizard could no longer affect him. Obviously, the new ancient god was there to protect him. Lord Ancestral Dragon, why are you doing this? Chio Buji kept struggling, and his face was ghastly pale. Although he was a spy arranged by the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas, he was also listed in the Register of Evil Dragons. Unless he had made meritorious contributions, he could not join the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas again. This time, in order to kill Lin Yuan, who had leaked the secret, he and the Resentment Society had exposed themselves, which meant that they had offended both Ao Sifan and Lin Yuan, who were powerful enough to stir up a storm in the Endless Sea. If Lin Yuan did not die, what was the point of all his sacrifices? Ao Sifan knew that the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas had infiltrated the evil dragon camp for a long time. Before they had enough benefits, they had done all they could to expel him from the evil dragon camp. But Lin Yuan was different. Today, the two sides had become sworn enemies. If Lin Yuan did not die today, he would be the one who would die in the future. However, he could not understand. Lin Yuan had leaked the secret today, which had harmed the interests of the dragon tribe of the Four Seas. If this matter was spread to the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas, even the Dragon King of the Four Seas would want to eat him alive. That was why he and the Resentment Society had exposed their identities to kill Lin Yuan regardless of the overall situation. However, when Lin Yuan was on the brink of death, there was actually an ancestral dragon who spoke up to protect Lin Yuan. To the other forces of the Sky Martial Continent, the ancestral dragon was the pillar of the entire dragon tribe of the Four Seas. He was the stabilizing force that could intimidate the other forces. To the dragon tribe of the Four Seas, he was the source of their bloodline. In the entire Endless Sea, the dragon tribe respected the bloodline the most. The four ancestral dragons were the most respected. Even the previous dragon king had to greet the servants of the ancestral dragon. It could be said that with the ancestral dragon as a guarantee, the entire dragon palace of the Four Seas did not have the guts to touch Lin Yuan. Ancient God Lizard and Lin Yuan both revealed grave expressions. It was not difficult to guess that the ancestral dragon of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas was an ancient god. After all, they were almighty demonic beasts that had lived for countless years. Even the demonic court that they had served had the title of ancient god. From this, it could be seen how powerful these true dragons were. Furthermore, with such a prosperous dragon tribe of the Four Seas, even if there were other ancestral dragons and other rising stars of the dragon tribe, they were much more powerful than an ancient god like the ancient god lizard who was about to fall. The ancient god lizard was grave because he was inferior to the ancestral dragon. Lin Yuan was grave, but he did not know why the ancestral dragon wanted to protect him. There were ancient experts on the Tianwu continent who used methods to protect him after countless years of rebirth. It was not strange for any kind of expert to appear in the even more vast Endless Sea. Therefore, when Lin Yuan exposed the matter of the Great Old Ones, it could be said that his heart was very calm. As long as a few old monsters that had not appeared in the world appeared, they would be able to make the dragon tribe of the Four Seas pay a painful price for their greed and contempt. Even if there were no such experts who dared to directly start a war with the dragon tribe of the Four Seas, it did not matter. Those opportunists who wanted to have a chance of survival would not sit idly by and watch Lin Yuan be killed by the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas and still be safe. Well, now a monster-level expert had appeared, and it turned out to be from the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. Just as Lin Yuan had expected, it did not hesitate to become enemies with an ancient god who had the will to die in order to protect Lin Yuan. As the saying goes, a starving camel is still bigger than a horse. This saying was not false. Even an ancient god who was about to die could easily kill a demonic king. Demonic beasts who had just entered the ancestral demon realm and had stepped onto the divine path would not be a match for it. Even other gods who possessed great divine power would not be willing to become enemies with an ancient god who was about to die. This was because the ancient god did not want to live in the first place. If you pushed it too hard, it would drag you down with it in a matter of minutes. An equally huge figure slowly appeared beside Lin Yuan's spirit. Its body was so huge that even the demonic beasts who were still alive were not weak, but they could not see its full appearance. It had an iron-gray body, prismatic scales, and sharp claws that were 1,000 meters long. The ancient god lizard's true body and Lin Yuan's spirit were as tiny as ants in front of this huge figure that was slowly appearing. The ancestral dragon? A hint of fear flashed across the ancient god lizard's eyes, but it did not back down. It said in a low voice, "If you want to kill me, it will only take about 10 moves. However, before your third move, I can easily kill this young friend. If I want to kill him, not just you, but all the experts of the dragon race of the 4 seas will do the same." Lin Yuan's mind raced. His gaze swept back and forth between the huge figure and the ancient god lizard. Then, he turned to look at Tao Tai. Worry appeared in his eyes once again. Before the ancient god lizard appeared, Tao Tai was definitely the strongest person present. The Society of Resentment, a titled demon king, could not even last one move in its hands. Even with Qiu Bufang and the 5 sons of the dragon race, it could still kill them with one punch. Even the ancient god lizard might not be able to do such a thing. From this, one could see how strong Tao Tai was. However, no matter how strong Tao Tai was, it was like a mouse seeing a cat in front of the ancient god lizard's divine might. It probably could not even use 10% of its strength. At the end of the day, Tao Tai was just an existence formed by countless strange insects gathered together. Although its strength was terrifying when gathered together, it also had the super regenerative ability to split itself. However, when faced with divine might, Lin Yuan could clearly see that the strange insects that made up Tao Tai's body were easily crushed one by one. If it hadn't had the super splitting ability of 1 to 2, 2 to 4, he would have fallen apart by now. However, this regenerative ability could only maintain Tao Tai's motionless posture. If it moved now, it might cause its body to split apart. Although it was not fatal, it was no longer a threat. However, this baptism of divine might seemed to be a good opportunity for Tao Tai. The insects were crushed one after another, and the resistance of the remaining insects to the power of divinity increased rapidly. The insects that split later were instantly torn apart at the beginning, but now, they could resist for 3 seconds before being torn apart. The improvement could not be said to be small. If one of them could maintain the baptism of divinity, Tao Tai's strength would definitely rise to another level. However, in the short term, Tao Tai could not be counted on. Chapter 736. Since the descendant of my race isn't willing to swear the oath, you can't force him. The ancestral Gragon's voice rang out once more without the slightest fluctuation in his emotions. You think that your words caused the current situation, but that's just your own obsession. I'll say that you're overthinking it. Today, you were waiting for the descendant of my race. Fate arranged for you to lead him down this path. Pfft, the lizard ancient god sneered and coldly said, "You're just twisting words and forcing logic. I don't believe that after living for so many years, you don't know what kind of fortune the convergence of the 3 realms will bring to this world." The ancestral Gragon muttered to himself for a moment before suddenly changing the topic. He sneered, "I understand. So you don't want to die, but your faith is withering day by day, and your strength is weakening by the day. You don't dare to fight my dragon race in the endless sea, and you don't dare to go to the continent to fight the humans. So you want to earn some merit to prolong your life." The concept of merit was not limited to the primordial world. In his previous life, Lin Yuan had often heard people say that good deeds were rewarded. This was a manifestation of merit. Goddess Nviwa had gained immeasurable merit and became a saint in one step after creating a human being. Although Hong Jun had become a legend after he took control of the Way of Heaven, the merit and karma had not been erased. Even an ordinary person could prolong his life and be immune to all diseases if he could accumulate merit and do good deeds all year round. The Tianwu world was not a world controlled by Hong Jun. Other than Lin Yuan's system that could interfere with the world's operations, everything else was operating according to the world's will. In this state, merit was merit, and no one would take advantage of it. If one had great merit, even becoming a saint was not impossible. Obeying the world's will and causing the convergence of the three realms was a great merit. While it was impossible to say that one could become a saint through merit, extending one's lifespan by several thousand years was not a problem. Humph, the lizard ancient god snorted. He was not angry that the ancestral Dragon had seen through him. He coldly said, "You already know my goal. Why don't you retreat? I can guarantee you that as long as I persuade this brat, I won't attack him again. In addition, this old man will owe your dragon race a favor. How about it? How about it? How about it? What do you think?" The ancestral Dragon chewed on the words "so what" 3 times. Suddenly, he sneered, "If it was in the past, I might have been tempted. But now, whether I offend you or not, the dragon tribe of the 4 seas has been forced into a desperate situation. If you want to obtain this merit to prolong your life, what can you do even if I don't let you?" In an instant, the positions between the two were reversed. At first, the ancient lizard god was willing to die, threatening the ancestral dragon with the identity of a dying ancient god. But after being exposed by the ancestral dragon, he didn't deny his desire for merit points. From this, it could be seen that the ancient lizard god didn't want to die. However, the great old ones were aggressive. One of the 4 ancestral dragons had already been infected and mutated. This meant that the great old ones had the strength to destroy the dragon race of the 4 seas. Originally, the dragon race of the 4 seas still had a way out. For example, they could go to the Sky Martial continent to reproduce and so on. However, after Lin Yuan mentioned the matter of the great old ones, the demonic beasts of the endless sea could no longer let the dragon race of the 4 seas leave. The 3 ancestral dragons could naturally use their own strength to carve out a bloody path, but what was the point of that? When one's cultivation reached such a realm, one's faith was already indestructible, and one's spirit wouldn't die. It wasn't a problem for them to kill their way out, but wanting to protect the dragon race of the 4 seas was a fool's dream. After all the dragon race of the 4 seas died in battle, the ancestral dragon's followers would definitely be less than 1 in 10. At that time, their strength would rapidly weaken, and it wouldn't be impossible for them to die. If you insist, then you're forcing this old man to die. The ancient lizard god shook his head. His gaze was deep as he said in a deep voice, "Why bother? Could it be that you really want to follow an old man like me to the Yellow Springs? Junior, this ancestor asks you. This old Western medicine's request isn't too much. Whether you agree or not, you have to give this ancestor a word, right?" Although he couldn't see the ancestral dragon's full appearance, Lin Yuan could still feel that the ancestral dragon's gaze had landed on him. Facing the ancient lizard god's divine might head-on, Lin Yuan gritted his teeth and said coldly, "This junior said before that I must kill the celestial arch. Otherwise, I won't be able to clear my mind and will die sooner or later. This junior definitely won't agree to this condition." Lin Yuan and the ancient lizard god were never fighting over the celestial thearch's life. If the 3 realms couldn't be gathered, the ancient lizard god wouldn't be able to obtain this merit. Once his faith was extinguished, he would quickly fall. It was the same for Lin Yuan. If he couldn't return to his previous life and take revenge, he would fall into the demonic path sooner or later. When that time came, he wouldn't even be able to retain his sense of self and would instantly turn into a murderous madman. Both of them were fighting for their lives, so naturally, there was no such thing as lowering one's head. "Ha ha 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 ha, good, you have the spirit of my dragon race's bloodline." The ancestral dragon laughed heartily for a while before slowly saying, "Big lizard, did you hear that? The descendant of my race said that he doesn't want to let the celestial arch go." He paused and then said meaningfully, "Don't pretend to be ruthless in front of me. You don't want this kid to kill the celestial arch because of the merit gathered by the 3 realms. You deliberately appeared and deliberately guided him so that the world won't succeed in its wishful thinking. You want to take advantage of this variable to defy the heavens and change your fate. I don't believe that you dare to kill him. Checkmate. This sentence could be said to be a fatal blow. The ancient lizard god wanted to protect the celestial Thearcha's name and to gather the three realms so that this world could be promoted to one of the great 1,000 worlds. Thus, the celestial Thearch was very important in his eyes. On the other hand, Lin Yuan was just as important in his eyes. Wahahaha, I'm so angry. The ancient lizard god roared and stared at the ancestral dragon coldly. His face was so gloomy that it was almost dripping water. If the ancient lizard god wanted to kill someone, the ancestral dragon would not be able to protect him even if he risked his life. Previously, when he threatened Lin Yuan, he was taking advantage of Lin Yuan's blind spot. He did not think that his life was equal to the celestial Thearcha's in the ancient lizard god's eyes. Now that the ancestral dragon had exposed him, Lin Yuan could be said to be fearless when facing the ancient lizard god again. He did not care about the ancient lizard god's threat at all. Thinking back to how the ancient lizard god had provoked a fight between the Netherworld King and the celestial Thearch, then tried to mediate between them and force Lin Yuan to swear an oath of friendship with the celestial Thearch. This action was tantamount to shooting himself in the foot. Now, not only would he not be able to obtain any merit, but if Lin Yuan insisted on fighting to the death with the celestial Thearch, if one of them really died in the other's hands in the future, then it would be a big joke. Chapter 737. The celestial Thearch had appeared after Lin Yuan, so they were supposed to be two parallel lines that did not intersect. However, the lizard ancient god's sudden appearance today changed that fate. If he did not think of a way to salvage the situation, he might even be hated by the will of the world and die prematurely, let alone get the merit points to prolong his life. He did not dare to kill Lin Yuan, and he could not defeat the ancestral Gregon. The situation was very awkward. It was hard to say how strong the ancestral Gregon was, but he was definitely good at sabotaging others. Although he had not really fought the lizard ancient god, he had forced him into a dead end. From today onwards, I will fight to the death with the dragon race of the four seas. The lizard ancient god glared at the ancestral Gregon with a face full of hatred. He turned around and strode in the direction he had come from. With every step he took, his true body shrank a little. After 100 steps, he returned to his original size. Not only did he not look magical, but he also looked lonely and sad. Then you can die. The ancestral Gregon's voice slowly rang out, as if he had expected this scene. There was no trace of emotion in his voice. As soon as he finished speaking, a golden red ball of energy fell from the sky. It flew so fast that it hit the lizard ancient god's back in the blink of an eye. Lin Yuan only heard a loud bang in his ear. Although he didn't move his feet, he was pushed back 5 meters by a huge force. When he raised his head again, the ancient lizard god that was 100 steps away had disappeared without a trace. Damn it, Lin Yuan's eyelids twitched. He knew that the ancestral dragon wouldn't be weak. After all, he was the ancestral demon that was worshipped by a branch of the dragon clan. The godly power that he had accumulated over the years was bound to be incomparably powerful. However, he didn't expect the ancestral dragon's strength to be so terrifying that it could kill the ancient lizard god, who was also a god, in one move. With such a huge gap in strength, the ancestral Gregon still had the mood to flirt with the lizard ancient god. When the lizard ancient god had restrained his killing intent and was planning to take revenge on the dragon race of the four seas in the future, he suddenly attacked as if he had no face. Gulp. No one knew who started it, but the sound of people swallowing their saliva suddenly rang out in the field. They had all experienced the ancient god lizard's strength firsthand. With its boundless divine might and its 10,000-meter-long true body, even if it didn't use any magical techniques, a single stomp could cause the sea demons present to suffer heavy casualties. Yet, it couldn't even withstand a single attack from the ancestral dragon. If the ancestral Gregon had the intention to kill today, the energy ball just now would not have been so small. Just like how there was a quick punch and a stored power strike, the energy ball just now was released instantaneously. There was no process of storing power at all, but that didn't mean that ancestral Gragon couldn't store power to strengthen the explosion's power and range. In the dark, Lin Yuan felt that ancestral Gragon's gaze fell on him again. "Brat, do you think that this old man is shameless? I could have defeated the cauldron with one move, but I had to use words to break its fighting spirit and wait for it to disperse and leave before I attacked?" The ancestral dragon's voice rang out slowly. Its body did not seem to have any intention of shrinking. It was unknown whether its body was originally so huge or it was still in its battle state. Lin Yuan's heterochromatic eyes shone brightly. This was not easy to answer. He felt that if he said that the ancestral Gragon was shameless, he might have to die together with the ancient god lizard. However, he didn't want to say anything against his will. Not long ago, he had made up his mind to make the dragon race of the four seas pay a painful price. The plan had just begun, and he was already flattering the ancestral dragon. He couldn't do such a thing. The ancestral Gragon didn't care about his face, but he did. "Brat, if you don't say anything, are you implying that this old man is shameless?" The ancestral Gragon's voice was somewhat cold, as if it was threatening Lin Yuan. The murderous aura penetrated his body. Lin Yuan shivered, but he still didn't say anything. Some things could be done, and some words could be said. However, if he said too many things against his will, it was tantamount to cutting off his own path. In the history of his previous life, the number of experts was as vast as the clouds and smoke. Any one of them could be the enemy of tens of thousands of people. These experts all had one thing in common: they would never admit defeat, and they would never lower their heads. Looking at the ancient myths of Huaxia, such as Quafu chasing the sun, Jing Wei filling the sea, Yugong moving the mountain, and so on, the main point was to highlight the spirit of fighting against heaven and earth. Looking at the Western myths, it was either the dusk of the gods or the final judgment. It was as if humans were born in this world to wait for the end of the world. Therefore, Huaxia was extremely powerful in his previous life. Even if a lion fell into a deep sleep, it would only be for a short period of time. Even if it suffered countless injuries during its sleep, it would immediately soar once it woke up. When had they ever seen a person who was servile and servile become a peerless expert? "Brat, you dare to resist my murderous aura without saying anything. This old man doesn't know whether to praise you for having a backbone or to say that you don't know what death is." The ancestral Gragon's voice slowly rang out. It was hard to tell whether it was praise or sarcasm. Then, he fell into silence with Lin Yuan, as if waiting for Lin Yuan to speak. However, the first to break the silence was not Lin Yuan, but Qiu Wuji, who had been hiding at the side. Qiu Wuji looked at the part of the ancestral Gragon's body with red eyes and roared, "Lord Ancestral Gragon, I don't understand what you mean. This Black Jiao is not a member of the dragon race of the four seas." It even revealed the matter of the aberration and put the dragon race of the four seas on the fire. If Lord Ancestral Gragon didn't do anything, it would be dead. Why? Why did you protect it? Lin Yuan felt that the ancestral Gragon's gaze had shifted away from him. Without the pressure, Lin Yuan instantly felt much more relaxed. He couldn't help but let out a long breath. However, at this moment, Qiu Wuji's legs went soft and he knelt on the ground. Trash. The Black Jiao's cultivation is only at the late-stage River Lord realm, but it can withstand my pressure. You're a titled demon king, but you can't even stand for a moment. No wonder the dragon race of the four seas has fallen to such a state and is even about to lose the right to rule the endless sea. You juniors are indeed getting worse with each generation. Even though the ancestral Gragon's expression couldn't be seen, the disappointment in his voice could be heard. Qiu Wuji almost spat out a mouthful of blood. The Black Jiao was at the late-stage River Lord realm? How the hell could it compare to an ordinary late-stage River Lord? That was an existence that could withstand the might of an ancestral demon powerhouse. In the endless sea, there are very few things that can escape my senses. I know what the Black Jiao did before. You don't have to repeat it. The ancestral Gragon's voice sounded again. It was still filled with disappointment and a little sadness. Chapter 738. After reprimanding Qiu Buyu, ancestral Gragon once again cast his gaze on Lin Yuan and said in a deep voice, "Boy, don't pretend to be confused. Just now, this old man asked you if you think this old man is shameless. Don't tell me you haven't figured it out yet?" Lin Yuan's eyes flashed and replied, "Senior, you're protecting me." Ha 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 ha. Ancestral Gragon laughed out loud and said with a smile, "Yes, but also not entirely correct. The old lizard is right. If I were to fight with it fairly, I would need at least 10 moves to kill it. However, within these 10 moves, it could kill you at least 5 times. Although it didn't have that intention, who knows what it could do when it was forced into a desperate situation. If it couldn't do that, it could kidnap you and talk to me. Could I still fight back? Either way, I would lose my face. Why should I let the junior take the risk?" Then, he paused and said meaningfully, "Furthermore, you call yourself the Blackwater Dragon King. You rule the northern frontier. Although you're not a tyrant in the entire Tianwu continent, you're still a ruler. You should know that history books are always written by the victors. Today, I ambushed you and killed you when you weren't prepared. However, who would dare to tell you the details? As long as you can win, you should do whatever it takes to win. Whether it's face or dignity, it's just an excuse for the losers." When one first heard this sentence, it sounded like the earnest teachings of an elder to a junior. However, after thinking about it carefully, it was not the case. Why did Lin Yuan turn against the Western Sea Dragon Palace? Because the Western Sea Dragon Palace wanted to use a treasure to interrogate Lin Yuan about his secrets. After they failed, they wanted to imprison Lin Yuan in the underwater prison. If Lin Yuan didn't cooperate, they would imprison Lin Yuan for the rest of his life. As the saying goes, people fight for their dignity, and Buddha fights for an incense stick. With this kind of humiliation, not to mention Lin Yuan, even the Dragon Palace in the Endless Sea who had been enslaved by the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas for many years would flip the table. Ancestral Gragon's words had a deep meaning. He wanted to persuade Lin Yuan to lower his head and not continue to be the enemy of the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas for the sake of face and dignity. Lin Yuan became silent again. These ancient gods had problems with their brains. One wrong word and they would turn hostile. The lizard ancient god didn't hesitate to confront the ancestral Gragon for the sake of merit. Now that the ancestral Gragon had spoken, it was hard to guarantee that he wouldn't kill Lin Yuan for the sake of the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas. But to make him lower his head? Don't even think about it. He had suffered enough torture and humiliation in his previous life. Even Lin Yuan himself did not think that he was a normal person. He had psychological problems for a long time. Therefore, when he faced Xia Xiu, Lin Yuan came forward to recruit him. It was not because the criminals and the demi-humans were part of his plan, but because he felt a kindred aura from Xia Xiu, so he had a series of follow-up plans. Otherwise, after the establishment of the northern region, the Demon Emperor would not have been immediately restrained. If a problem could be solved by killing, then it would be solved by killing. If one's strength wasn't enough, then they would think of ways to weaken the other party. This was the path Lin Yuan walked. It wasn't as imposing as killing 99,000 people, but it was essentially the same. Establishing a faction in the northern frontier to keep the other parties in check was indeed the way of the king. However, Lin Yuan had suppressed the northern frontier with his unparalleled strength and monstrous aptitude. Rather than saying that the civil and military officials of the northern frontier were restrained by the various factions, it wasn't that they were willing to be restrained because they feared Lin Yuan. With such a character, no matter how many thoughts he had, he wouldn't go against his heart. The Dragon Palace of the Four Seas had to pay the price. No one would be able to protect them. It's been a long time since this old man has found an outstanding junior in the Dragon Clan. So far, there are only 1.5 who have the potential to step into the Ancestor Demon realm. Ao Siphon counts as half, and you count as 1. If you are willing to let go of your former enmity with the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas, this old man can represent the other 3 brothers to confer you the title of the 7th Dragon God of the Dragon God Palace. Although your strength doesn't meet the standard for the time being, you will receive the corresponding treatment. From then on, you can choose any resources that the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas has. The Dragon Palace of the Four Seas will also have to greet you as a junior. How about that? Ancestral Gragon was still staring at Lin Yuan as he spoke in a sincere tone. Pfft, a sneer sounded from the void. Ancestral Gragon's expression suddenly changed. His figure flashed and reappeared 1,000 meters away, looking at Lin Yuan from afar. It seemed that he was extremely afraid of the sneer that came from nowhere. I will take what I want myself. If I don't want it, there's no point in forcing it on me. Lin Yuan sat up and coldly sized up Ancestral Gragon, who looked as if he was facing a great enemy, as he spoke slowly. Lin Yuan wasn't afraid of the sneer just now because it was one of his own. He was also one of the system's hosts. It was just that he was chosen many years earlier than Lin Yuan. He was also an existence that the system had high hopes for. Although he was walking on the god's path arranged by the system, his clan was a mutated insect, which was the mutated insect that formed the body of the Tao Tai. Then, he artificially created various soul fragments to combine with the mutated insect. After many years of operation, the Tao Tai had countless subordinates with strength similar to the Tao Tai's. The Tao Tai himself was also an extremely powerful god. The system was such an unreasonable thing. Lin Yuan reached the 8th level of the Mountain Lord realm within 3 years because he had deliberately suppressed his growth speed. However, he had already stepped on the god's path at this level and created his own clan. Once the gray-scaled flood dragon person matured, even if Lin Yuan's cultivation level didn't increase, he would still be an existence that couldn't be underestimated when he traveled the myriad worlds with his divine power alone. There were more than 9,000 cheats in the myriad worlds. Any one of them who stood out to support Lin Yuan wasn't someone that a mere native of an incomplete world could compare to. Although each host was from one world and couldn't interfere with each other, they could only reluctantly transact through the system. This was a rule set by the system. However, Lin Yuan believed that if the Ancestral Gragon really had the intention to kill, the system would definitely violate the rules and summon the senior who had sneered to descend, giving the dragon race of the Four Seas an absolutely cruel blow. The Heavenly Tao was the Heavenly Tao. So what if it was an incomplete Heavenly Tao? It wasn't something that any Tom, Dick, or Harry could provoke. When the Great Old Ones offended the system, it immediately triggered a mission to eliminate the Great Old Ones in the myriad worlds. If the dragon race of the Four Seas didn't know what was good for them, the dragon race bloodline in these 9,000 worlds would probably be exterminated. The dragon race bloodline was noble and powerful. Wasn't the witch race created by the 12 ancestral shamans formed from Pangu's body and blood essence powerful? Not noble. In the Great Witch race, the witch race was the loser. It was true that the bloodline could bring help, but it wasn't omnipotent. Otherwise, when walking in the world, wouldn't it be over if you just said that you had the bloodline of a certain race? Why would you need to cultivate so painstakingly? Usually, people would at most be wary of your race's foundation. If benefits were to move people's hearts, who would know who you are? Even in the Sky Martial continent, the number of aristocratic descendants and bloodline demonic beasts that died in all sorts of battles was countless. You're tuning into the Dreamy Love Stories YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.